where, well, so far where we found them.
Oops.
And then
Okay.
so that would make sense because they would cross over, you know, early hominins or early humans and Denisovans or whatever would cross over into North America in that area, over
Yeah.
to,
There
where
we
the
go.
land bridge was, which that's where they crossed. So that would make sense. But that's the
Yeah.
first time I've heard that. So anyway,
First surprise they got from Native Americans is they were more closely related genetically to the Japanese than any
yeah.
other group in Asia, which is interesting.
Mm.
And so they would have
Okay.
probably had
Should be back.
Denisovan genes in them too.
Oh my god. It's...
Yep.
It's kind of cool. So, all right.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject, but go ahead. Back to the bugs.
Oh, yeah, that's the last picture of the bug. That's kind of a picture of his head.
Yeah.
As cool as I could get it. So, he's kind of a pretty dude. I like him. So, anyway, that one's over. So, John Peterson sent me a video. Let me see if I can find it again. Which I thought was kind of amazing. And this guy that does these videos, he's really, really good.
Yeah, I watched it. I just watched a video on him. He always has like the most recent, finds and stuff. I watch him all the time. This guy. Yep.
Yeah, this fish has the biggest brain per body mass ratio of any vertebrate. And they found out that it's called an elephant fish, and it lives in lakes and rivers in Africa. And it's just it's got a huge cerebellum, and it's got, let me see if you can see where he shows the, so it communicates with electroreceptors and electronic fields. And the blue part is a receptor, and the red part generates electric fields. And what they noticed about them is that when they're in a group, one of them will be broadcasting, and all the other ones will be listening. And then when he's done broadcasting, he pauses. Unlike people on this channel, when he pauses, everybody else pauses for a moment, and then one of the other ones will start talking, and they never overtalk each other. But anyway,
That's pretty cool.
They have and then if they put them by themselves, they'll just start talking and they never pause. They just keep talking, and they've found very complex speech patterns similar to birds and whales.
Hello.
And they have this
Do I want to
gigantic
do that?
cerebellum.
Well, I should do, really.
Takes over their whole brain and
well,
handles
there you
this
Too late.
incoming communication.
I was too slow.
And they seem to be communicating about, like for instance, they can identify each other's sex by the way they sound. So but when they put them in captivity,
okay, I've just closed Discord down because I thought it might be taking up extra bandwidth.
They don't mate in captivity; they can't tell who's who.
Never mind.
Which is, and there's all sorts of other interesting things.
Let me just open it on the other computer. It should
I'll
be
put
right.
the URL for that video in the private chat. I'm trying to find a picture of the brain here.
Here we go.
Let's see. I can't find the brain picture.
Yeah, wouldn't it be amazing that if we could figure out, how other animals or species, how they can. Well, we know certain ways that they.
I'm tempted to just go and see if they're still there.
Communicating. What are they
What are
saying?
they communicating?
Couldn't we? Wouldn't it be cool if we could talk to them? And
let's just go and see if they're still there.
I'm sure there's that we'll discover someday that we certainly don't know today. That would be quite amazing.
So my message in stream.
I'm trying to
Made
find
it
out
private.
which here. That big yellow spot, I think, or
okay.
the blue spot, I think, is the cerebellum, and the first one is it shows you the relative size of this guy's cerebellum compared to the other fish. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, we might learn a little bit about our language, because a lot of what we communicate is just a great deal of structure is what mood we're in, what we're doing, what we might do, there's all of these emotional subsignals
That's useful.
that we do. And then when we finally, and then when we arrive at, when we come to terms with that, where we're in front of somebody, we trust them, we know they're open to listening, then we start going on about rational things.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Then we go off onto this whole rational, part of our language where, we'll discuss concepts or politics or the weather or whatever. But there's a whole lot of communication that we do that's sublingual and body language and stuff like that. And I think there is a whole lot more to learn about how humans communicate. Like Desmond Morris did a book back in the 60s called The Naked Ape.
He did.
And he was an anthropologist, and he worked in New York City. That's where he did his work. Not out in the fields of Africa, but in New York City. And he watched people talk.
Yeah.
And he noticed how people would look at their watch and, how that was a signal for something, and how they would do all these, he called them displacement reactions and stuff to basically establish a communication framework before we started going off about the weather or whatever we were going to talk about. Is really interesting. And how people tell you that they're tired of you, they want to go.
Yeah. Well, I know somebody that's very emotional. And I'm sure you did too. Sal, he kind of, shows a lot of emotion in his videos and things. So he's one person that's very, very
He
emotional.
was really impressed with the Tortured Mind of Saul Cordova that I did.
Yeah.
He was really impressed with the video we did on him. He's like, why are they doing this? Why are they picking on me?
Why are they picking on me? Yeah. We need to stop that. It's so mean.
Yeah. And then he admitted to being addicted to speed, as in speed of sound, where he actually admitted that, it's been 3 days since I went over and looked at his channel count, and I looked today, and I have 100 more subs than he does. And he got this smile, and and he said, well, that's a little petty. But apparently he's been checking on my sub count, and every now and then, but then he's trying to quit his addiction, so we're going to try to help him quit his addiction by, one method is to immerse the person in the addiction. So we're going to try to do as many streams next week as we can on Cell. And just, dissect him like I dissected that butterfly.
Yeah, there you go. That'll be fun.
By the way, did you see the creation myths discussion with Michael Behe today?
Oh shit! Was that today? I think I was at the clinic.
Oh, okay. Well, let me get you the link. Although I'm sure you're subscribed to him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Sal did a video, did a discussion with SJ Thomas.
Yeah, I saw that. And
Huge lad.
Lots of emotion in there. Well, yeah.
Sorry, mate. I'm not in the screen.
Every time I tuned in.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Every time I tuned
Okay.
in, Sal seemed
Hello,
to be talking
guys.
about himself. I was trying to hear what SJ had to say.
Thank you, mate.
I don't know.
No, it's all right, mate.
So I was a little. I don't know. I gotta listen.
Sorry, I've been away. Thank you very much.
Kind of person she is. So on Praise's stream last night, I came in to chat a little bit because I noticed Dell.
This is a shout out
Dell
from Beirut, Lebanon.
yeah.
Okay.
What's going on about the vaccine?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I put the statistic that
Bye.
99.2% of all people dying and hospitalized of COVID in Minnesota are non-vaccinated, right? And then he went on and Cheryl said, "Don't even bother
a million
Dell.
subscribers.
Don't even talk to him."
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
he's a
There is
vaxxer.
always that.
You don't want to talk to a vaccine.
Yeah.
And they were going on with her, and they mentioned this one guy, this video about this guy that supposedly discovered our
Anyway,
mRNA.
appreciate you dropping by, dude. Thank
even
you.
though he only
Please,
worked in
if
a
you
lab for 6
remember to
months
like
got
and
thrown out
subscribe,
because he
that
was
would
a
be really
political
nice.
loudmouth.
You don't have to, though.
Anyway, he
It does help
has a
the
video
algorithm.
who my Republican friends have sent to me, the same guy, right? So they got one guy.
I do need to try and be quick on here, though.
Who's
'cause
basically, I think he studies viruses, and their one guy is their whole reason for not getting the vaccine. And then, but But thinking about it, people that don't get vaxxed are dying and being hospitalized at a higher rate.
Yeah.
I mean, I really care about people that die of this thing,
Yeah.
but goddamn, there's a part of me that just doesn't want to care about people that die because they're too fucking stupid to get the vaccine.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
Yeah.
God, do we need to care about them? I don't know. I'm
I know.
conflicted about this.
Yeah. I know.
want to
You
let
want
you know we have a
Yeah.
we have a Vessel Drace is in the side chat, and apparently he rescued a puppy. So I just want to commend him for that. He's looking for a home for it. So if any of you want to go wherever Vessel Drace lives and pick up a puppy, then you have one.
Yeah,
Apparently.
drop
But
by
he
anytime,
has
mate,
probably
and say,
passed his
I hope everything's sweet in
inspection and
Lebanon.
testing.
Yeah.
Right.
I know it's a
I
beautiful
would
country.
pass, and I really need a puppy, but
I
damn
know
it.
somebody else from
But
Lebanon.
anyway, if Dessel
And they're a
found
really
this
nice
puppy,
guy. He was
it's
really
a
nice.
wrong puppy. The puppy's wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also was going to bring up, did anybody catch Leo's debate with that Church of Entrance?
I did, yeah.
Is that
I
her
did
name?
catch Leo's debates.
Oh, the
did
girl
not.
that goes-
I'd have
on
to go
eight.
back and listen to the
Oh
recording.
my word! Oh my word!
Did she go?
Yeah, she's.
Full word?
Yeah. I mean, myself, my opinion. This is only my opinion. That I would say that's right in the lines of batshit crazy.
Whoa.
I don't know. She was really. I don't know. She's a strange person to me, and she behaved very strangely during that debate with Leo. But
gotta
everybody
watch it,
enjoyed it. Everybody enjoyed it. She just babbled on, and basically, from what I could tell, babbled on about absolutely nothing. And I thought, and Leo was fantastic. I mean, he was very concise. Explained everything, so
Eesh.
even a layperson can, understand what he's talking about. And he got pretty technical. I thought Leo did a great job, and the shit that she was saying was just babble.
Maybe
So,
Leo can come on and give us his impressions of the interchange.
Sounds like a bit of bogus, actually,
yeah,
because
I guess Dessel
what
agrees
actually
with me.
happened was
She's indeed
Leo
batshit
conceded
crazy.
the argument,
I tuned in a couple times, and I'm such
and then
a coward. I decided instead
redefined
to go around and just stub
well,
my
he didn't
toe
concede the
over and
argument. He
over and over
redefined
again
the Big Bang, the
because
meaning
that
of
was
the
less
Big Bang,
painful than listening to her.
Yeah,
But the man knows his limits.
and actually, what
Yep.
she said, I
we
actually
have
understood.
Vesta's assessment of
So it wasn't.
full nut
Full
bar,
nut,
electro
yeah.
nut, and nuts on the side.
yeah.
We have a
Wasn't
DSM-5,
incomprehensible.
diagnosis here from Immutable.
Yeah,
Very, very good.
yeah.
And we have another diagnosis from Dessel.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the trend is
Yeah.
adding up.
Yeah. Well, I watched it, and pretty much all. I think I missed the end
It's
of
an
it, the
M110
very
as
end
well,
of
is
it.
it?
I had about
Just
enough
get rid of
her,
that. Get rid
so I
of
didn't
that.
catch the very end, like closing statements and stuff. But yeah,
Okay.
to me, I was like, real. It's almost like an absolute waste of time to even debate her. So it's like, yeah,
She is. I think she is what would happen if Karen got a PhD in physics.
yeah, pretty much.
Your average Karen got a PhD and went to Walmart.
Yeah.
Did you see the one? I don't know where I saw it, but there was a Karen in New York City that was hassling a couple of Hispanic people, I believe. They had a dog that wasn't on its leash, and she kept trying to call the dog out into moving traffic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I didn't actually watch it. I did see the headlines of that. Yep.
Yep. So, if that woman had a PhD in physics, she would be the Church of Entropy. But okay, I want to be generous to it too, because I really haven't had a chance to listen to her stuff at all, because I either cowardly quit because I just can't stand it. It's like it's like scraping Otangelo on a chalkboard. Okay,
Yeah.
but I want to listen to her ideas.
Yeah.
That's an interesting visual.
That is.
Can I Can I take a few seconds because my comment on that debate wasn't read out the way that I wrote it, and I see Leo's in the chat. So what I actually wrote is that I think he handled her constant over talking a lot better than he handles my sometimes over talking, and I think he did very well. If he does that in future, yeah, that was. I think it was brilliant. I don't think that I would have had the restraint that Leo had with that particular thing he was debating.
What restraint?
Yeah, and she, you know,
She was basically what you would get if you crossbreed Dawkins with a 5-year-old.
Oh, come on, that's
Yeah.
insulting to 5-year-olds.
It is, but that is what it was. I mean,
Not my intent. No, not my opinion.
yeah, she was like when Leo was like making a point, and if it was for any length,
Oh my
she
God,
was
okay,
pretending
right.
like she was going to sleep, and you know, and then she was going woo woo.
Okay, this is how it's going to go down.
It
We're
was
going to
like,
put this
oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
she
in
was
here.
just out there.
We're going to grab
the
that.
the moment your
We're gonna grab
interlocutor
that.
does that, that is the moment you know you won the debate. Hey, Leo,
Yeah.
nice job yesterday.
Yeah. Yep.
I better not go in because
Yeah,
I
you
will
took one for
disagree.
the team.
What did you eat, drink, or smoke before the debate that you kept your cool with the over talking? That I need to know.
It was also on Amy's channel. So
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
also,
wait,
Amy gets
and-
more
and-
respect.
well, no,
Hold on, Amy gets more respect than Speed. Okay.
No, it was. I should have. What I should have said is that it was a formal debate on
Yeah.
Amy's channel. Maybe it makes me somewhat like of a hypocrite or something like that. I don't really care.
Something
but
like that,
I do
yeah.
try to compose myself a little bit more formally when I'm in a debate than I would in like these types of streams where I view it as more like a bunch of friends sitting, downstairs in in the man cave having a discussion, and that's why.
Right. Yeah.
I might get a little bit more passionate is because I feel a little bit more comfortable around you guys in those settings. Not that I'm not comfortable in formal debates, but that's very much a formal setting. That's more if I'm on a stage. So
Yeah,
that's
Leo,
why I
the reason
composed.
I left the comment is because if there are people watching, it doesn't matter whether
What
it's
comment?
this channel. The comment that I just said that Amy didn't read out correctly.
That apparently,
was your
I bet
comment
you
last
that's
night?
Russell's puppy right there in that icon.
You remember that Amy said, "Gonna go for it in the side chat," and he said, "Good job." Yeah, that was not even half of what I wrote.
Yeah. Well, I did actually see the comment. So.
Okay, so and the reason I put that
Is
comment
this all for
there is
selling?
because
I mean, this is pretty much all for selling,
If you
so.
conduct yourself in the exact same way all the time, you're going to make much more.
Oh, you're kidding
people
me.
Think about your point of view than if not. That's what I'm saying. It makes you come across better.
I also knew that she was gonna do a lot of over talking, so I was like, it's gonna be better if I just let her over talk.
Leo, which
And
one
just
is what the fuck
make
she's
the
talking
faces.
about?
I don't know, and make the faces that I did. Just.
I really like your. I like your counter jab about the Pauli exclusion principle. I thought that was pretty good.
So initially I tried to walk her through like a Socratic method, a line of reasoning, like, what a white dwarf is. Oh, well, that's a type of star. Yeah, it's a white dwarf is a particular type of stellar remnant, more specifically. Do you know what sustains white dwarf stars against their own gravity? No, I don't. Well, that would be what's called the electron degeneracy pressure. This results from the Pauli exclusion principle. Do you know what happens if an accreting white dwarf star, generally in some sort of binary stellar system where some star goes,
Okay.
It has a stellar becomes a stellar remnant, a white dwarf, before the other star does whatever it's doing and begins to pull off of it. Do you know what happens?
Yeah,
when the
too
Chandrasekhar
much
limit
over
is
talking.
reached? Well,
Tell me
gravity
about it.
overcomes the power
And
of
everyone's sitting in there going,
gravity crushes
well,
it.
Leo, well done, you didn't
Well,
overtalk.
I actually think with white stars it explodes and whatever. I think it's.
I mean, I don't think it's
you know,
helping Leo
but
much because he
with,
doesn't
like, say,
understand social
a
cues.
stellar core of a very, very massive star near the end of its life, when it reaches the Chandrasekhar limit, or when its core does, it collapses into either a neutron star or black hole.
But, you know,
So
he made
whole
some good
point of me
points,
trying
that's
to
for
run
sure.
down that line of reasoning was to demonstrate that the Pauli exclusion principle. I don't know if I'd word it as that it can be violated, but it can be overcome by gravity.
Yeah,
He can't
I
be violated.
took that away as your point, so I think you explained that well enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought your conversation with her,
And
you know, for
in the
you
extreme
went pretty
limit,
well.
you know,
You
well,
know,
I don't know.
I think that she's got wacky ideas, so I mean that's just me. But I thought that you talked with her.
No, they're just old-fashioned. Oh my
Yeah,
god, look at this.
And towards the end there, I tried to move to a more philosophical leaning discussion because obviously the science wasn't working. To try to get her to explain what she meant when she said that essentially that a singularity is necessitated by the Big Bang model, which it's not.
Yeah,
She
you
didn't.
on that
Can
there
you
had
tell
to
us-
be a singularity, it had to be a beginning, yada yada.
Mhm.
Can you tell us what her idea is? What it's
Yeah, I
based
was-
on?
Her
Kinda
idea is
asked
that the
that,
universe
yeah.
is uncreated. I don't know. I think she holds to some type of steady state.
Okay,
Something
but-
along those lines.
She did use that phrase steady state. At the same time, like she was
Okay.
she kind of, if I remember right, it's talking about like the thermodynamics, like maybe not the thermodynamics, but like talking about how it both expands and contracts. So
Oh yeah.
it
Well,
sounded
it does,
kind of like
doesn't
she
it?
could go like
Contracts
a
because of
cyclical route
gravity,
at the
expands
same
because of the
time,
cosmological
but
content.
I mean, it's just not the way that I would personally want to defend a cyclical model. If I had a cyclical model, it would include the Big Bang.
Yeah. The other thing is that she said the Big Bang can't explain, you know, how stars and planets form, or even how galaxies form, and it's not supposed to. And that was like where I said that sociology, which is very, very, very advanced in understanding how humans interact on a very large scale, is it needs to explain, you know, the evolution of hominids. No, that's not what it's designed to do. That's why I drew that analogy.
Did she make any relevant points at all, or would you say?
Yeah, I thought so.
None that I can immediately think that come to the top of my head, but I'm not going to say
Yeah.
that she didn't.
Her, I think for me personally, I would just say that her case overall, I think would be like a good caution to people who want to take the singularity idea and stuff like that way too friggin' far, and start like just talking all sorts of like metaphysics about a ultimate beginning point, and it just gets weird. And I don't think it's something that you can conceptualize. I don't think it makes sense. I wouldn't go that route. And if
yeah.
you do, I think that some of her
But then
complaints would apply.
you're doing the same
Like
thing.
one of the things she showed on screen was
The way she was
how
talking
it
about it.
violates the first law of thermodynamics, but again, only if you're interpreting it as like some kind of radical ultimate word.
Okay, what is wrong with your audio? Seriously.
Pretty
What
bad.
is wrong with
I can hear him just fine.
Yeah, no, I know,
Yeah.
but there's like a buzzing.
There's a hump.
Yeah,
Well,
okay, you're
that's-
picking up on the buzz. 1 second.
Probably got AC going, maybe, or something.
Yeah, I'm just a bit irritable right now. Sorry.
So what is wrong with it? Okay, so we have black holes, and we don't really understand what
Dun,
happens
dun, dun, dun.
in a black
Past
hole.
the
Right?
event horizon, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the
Black
idea
holes have
that
no hair is the phrase. We know three things: their electric charge, their mass, and their spin. All other
Okay.
information is dubbed hair, and the phrase often goes, "Black holes have no hair."
Okay, so on the other side, basically, of a black hole is the possibility of them spewing out into another Big Bang.
Possibly, but
No.
I'm not going to grant it any level of credence because no cosmologist would really grant the sort of the white hole idea that everything that goes into a black hole comes out somewhere, whether it's somewhere else in this universe or into another
Well,
universe.
that can't be the
Simply
case.
not and never was taken serious, and that's just really
Why?
why? Because there's nothing indicating.
Well,
number
Hawking
one, it would
radiation.
violate.
The Hawkins
It
radiation, right?
well, no, it would violate fundamental laws of quantum mechanics that information must be conserved. That you can't.
Well, it wouldn't,
just-
obviously.
just, like it's essentially the second law of thermodynamics for quantum mechanics. You cannot destroy information. And
Yeah, but it is
information,
conserved.
information would be like any physical configuration that any degrees of freedom that some system could have.
Okay, but
Yeah.
it is. But why
certainly
couldn't it be
wouldn't.
conserved?
Why
Wouldn't
couldn't
be.
what be conserved?
The information. Why
No, it
couldn't
has to be. It has to be conserved.
Okay,
You
because-
cannot destroy.
Why wouldn't it be
Okay,
conserved in
okay,
another
at the-
universe?
At the Big Bang, there was not a completely homogeneous mixture coming out of the expansion of the universe in the beginning.
Probably there was, yes.
But there couldn't be, otherwise things would not have.
No, it's
There
called
wouldn't have been
CP
any
violation, and
perturbation
you're
to make
absolutely
one
right.
The
thing.
perturbations
Another-
are what gave rise to the inhomogeneities. The universe
Right.
would have been considered near
Okay,
perfectly
so the
homogeneous.
Near.
Why
It was
could
He
the
said, there you go, smuggles it in.
perturbation not?
Tell
why
you,
could the
his
perturbations not be that
philosophy is
information
A
coming
little
from
dodge,
that other
you
side?
ask me?
Because then the
If he
information
doesn't push
would
back
be
against it
conserved
when I'd say
in,
it.
Well, can I
in our
ask-
universe. It's
can I
going
ask you-
someplace
read
else.
it.
Hey Leo,
But
can I
I-
ask you a question? Wait a minute, how, if the theory you were talking about, or the hypothesis you were talking about that you say most scientists don't agree with, that on the other side of a black hole is like a white hole, and anything that goes into a black
Go, John.
hole
Go, John.
ends up either
You
in
can
some
work
other
it out.
universe or somewhere else in this universe, how would the information be being destroyed? Wouldn't it
Well,
be-
yeah, I shouldn't have
just
said
being
destroyed it. The information can't leave this universe. If it's
Yeah,
in this universe, it's in this universe. It's not going to go anywhere. Not
Yeah,
to
but-
mention that we
There you
have
go. There he
Hawking
goes.
radiation.
Begging
So
the
we know
fucking
that
question
whatever's
again.
going into a black hole is being radiated back into this universe.
Right,
So it can't
right.
be going outside of this universe. Hawking was, I believe, proven wrong. Was proven wrong or proved somebody
He
wrong?
was
I can't
proven.
remember
He was
which
proven.
one it was.
Hawking was proven right. The implications of that. The implications of that. There could be many universes inside black holes, which also implies that our universe could be inside of a black hole. Done.
I don't know if I've ever heard that one, but yeah. And anyway, yeah. If this information was going someplace else in our universe or going into another universe, we wouldn't expect to observe Hawking radiation.
It's just not true.
Yeah, but what do
But-
we know about the structure
It's
of
just not true.
the universe inside of a black hole? We don't know.
We don't know what
Yeah.
space-time is like.
And the
that's
other
an
thing is
ignorant.
that, okay, there isn't enough matter going into any one black hole, so we'd end up with small universes. But in some other universe, some other place prior to us, it's possible that there was one whopping big motherfucking black hole that is our entire universe, and we're actually what is inside of that black hole.
I'm curious why people like this idea when it just does not match. I don't. It doesn't even make sense to me. It
Why doesn't
doesn't.
it make sense?
Just like I actually disagree with something that Nick Lucid runs the Science Asylum channel, phenomenal channel. My God, I think he's probably one of my favorite science communicators on YouTube. But he says that black holes there isn't like an actual object there. It's just a region in space-time. I disagree with that, and I think most astrophysicists would disagree with that. A black hole is an object. There is an object made of matter there. It's just matter in an extraordinarily exotic form that we don't have access to. We can't measure that type of matter because the event horizon, if this were the actual black hole, the actual object made of matter, the event horizon is probably somewhere around it, and that's the point at which the curvature of space-time
You're
onto
kidding, that's all
the
I can
object
tell.
is so great that the
Fuck
away
me.
from direction or the opposite direction just doesn't even exist anymore, which is why nothing escapes past that
I'm at
point. But
39.
most likely, I think most of the professionals would say there's a physical object there made of matter. We just don't know what that because it has mass, it has electric charge, it has volume. It's an object. It's a physical
Yeah.
object made of
That's not
physical
true.
matter. That's
Yeah,
what black holes are.
it's a universe.
I don't.
I
think so,
can't.
no.
I can't be talking over.
Yeah,
fucking
but why? Wait,
because it's not indicated by the data.
And
what
it's
do you
certainly
think
not.
it's? Yeah, but what data?
The data that we
We have
have
no
about
idea what's
how
inside
black
a black
holes
hole.
currently operate, and
Okay.
how quantum fields behave in curved spacetime.
Okay, but what data is that?
What do you mean? What data is that? That's
What is it that what is it that pushes back on that possibility of some really massive restructuring of okay, going from our frame, basically our frame of physical laws, to this tiny little singularity, and inside that singularity, it sort of
there
blows
is
up
no
into
singularity.
another frame.
There is no singularity in singularities are not real things. I
Right.
want everybody everywhere in the world to understand this. A
Okay,
singularity
so
is not a physical object.
what do you,
All a
so,
singularity means is that, look, past this point, the physics we currently have is not advanced enough to explain what's going on. We need to improve it.
okay, little tiny thing. We'll call it a little tiny thing instead of a singularity.
Well, it's probably not tiny. It's just, I mean, it probably is quite small for now. It's probably
Okay,
smaller than
Yeah, I
neutron
can't
our
feel
stars.
it
scale,
be 90
on
either.
our scale.
The
From this scale,
fuck?
it's tiny, but then going in, if we were inside of that black hole or inside of that universe, expanding on the other side of it, as I put it, I see cones, one cone going into another and coming out in various sizes all over, and the universe is sort of this boiling,
Epsilon Alpha.
or the cosmos
that
is this
is
boiling
FP7,
cauldron
I
of
can
black
say.
holes folding into different space-time
The universe is a
universes
fractal.
everywhere.
Leo, I got a
Space-
question. There's a good comment in the side chat that Hawking proved that eventually black holes will, will
Yes.
eventually die.
Yeah,
Do you
they
know
will
how
evaporate.
how did he figure that out? Was that just
He looked at the
mathematical or what?
Yeah, he looked at the mathematics of quantum fields and how they behave in extremely curved spacetimes.
Okay.
Like what you would have around a black hole. In all actuality, every object creates Hawking radiation because every object curves space-time. So it's just that no object. So if we just took, say, this lighter and just left it, it was the only object in the universe. All of the constituent elementary particles that make up this lighter would decay back into their quantum fields before the lighter could decay through Hawking radiation. So Hawking radiation as a mechanism for the deterioration or the evaporation of an object is not in any way, shape, or form meaningful or prominent until you get to something as massive, as dense as a black hole.
Okay, I think I understand that. Sort of.
Good. I'm glad you do.
Anybody else?
The
No.
picture,
Well, Andrew's coming in, so he'll have
the
plenty to
picture
talk
that
about.
we get of Hawking radiation, that you get the particle pair creation and one falls in and the other one, that's not at that's a very, very poor description of what Hawking radiation is. A very, very poor description. And this is the cool thing about quantum, very advanced quantum field theory, like a quantum field theory, on curved spacetimes and things like that, is that you get like Hawking radiation, the Casimir effect, the Unruh effect, and this is the result of how quantum fields behave in space-time when you curve it or move it at various speeds, and a variety of different things. And it's some very, very interesting effects. Very interesting.
Well, one of the things that they talk about too is that there possibly could be, billions upon billions of tiny, small black holes out there that we have no idea that are there.
Yeah.
So that's one,
Yes,
right?
the problem with that is that those probably don't exist. One, we don't really have any definable mechanisms for how. Two, they probably wouldn't persist for very long at all because they're so small.
So you
And
wonder-
there actually is a smallest limit that black holes can be. Theoretically, I should say more hypothetically speaking, you can make black holes really any size as long as the radius of that object is below that of whatever its Schwarzschild radius would be. But there, in the real world, there's a limit below which we wouldn't expect black holes to be capable of forming.
Right. So they figure eventually the universe is going to be nothing but black holes, right? Eventually, that's what will be left, basically,
Probably,
and
yes.
then once they phase out, nothing but radiation, and then whatever after that.
I believe it is either protons
right?
or photons, and I think it might be photons will be the last things to decay back into their quantum fields in the universe.
Okay. Yeah.
And it will be the photons that are released through Hawking radiation.
Right. Yeah.
So what is Hawking radiation?
What results when it's what results of quantum fields. It's a result of quantum fields in a
I
curved
think I'm gonna
space-time,
need these.
whereby
But I can't
the
sell them here.
the differentiation
Yeah,
in the
can't sell
curvature
them here.
on the quantum field results in a pinching effect, which then changes the mode of vibration, the essentially the mode of the wave functional, defining that mode of that quantum field such that it has a higher energy that we can detect as particles.
I think
And
I'm
that's
gonna
why
have
they're
to
called
check with,
virtual particles.
Just
I'm gonna
buy
have
one
to
of
check with
those.
Church of Entropy to make sure that all the shit that
Yeah.
you're saying here is
Yeah,
right.
go
'cause
right
it
ahead.
Just
Go right
doesn't
ahead.
sound. You don't think that's a good idea? No.
Go for it. Shit.
Leo, you know what? I think I just found your girlfriend, Church of Entropy.
No, she's married
Yeah.
anyway.
Do you know?
So?
I thought they
She's
were a gay
married?
couple as well.
I
Holy
do believe
shit.
so. No, is she married? I think she said husband.
Wow. I can just only imagine what her husband is like, based on what I've seen about her.
I mean, it's called having an
Wow.
open relationship.
I'm
Crazy.
imagining he's like a dog who has to pee really bad and really wants to get out of the house.
Fuck's sake, fuck.
God damn, Speed, you went there. You went there.
All right, Andrew, you've been waiting. Come on, bring your questions to Leo. Go ahead. Now's your
Can you guys
chance.
hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. Hey Leo, how are you?
Howdy. I'm fine.
You're
So
talking
you're
too much, Andrew.
what?
You're talking too
Oh,
much.
I am. Okay, I'll silence myself then.
Go ahead. I'm just fucking with you again. Okay. Go ahead.
So your debate was with Church of Entropy, Leo, on the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess how could you summarize like our main points for me, because I didn't get to see it. Was that today?
The Big Bang
Yes.
isn't scientific because of the Pauli exclusion principle, I guess.
What? That doesn't make much sense.
You're telling me.
Yeah,
Wait,
that one.
come on now.
That's the one
That's
I
what I
tuned in
find
for, and that's when I went out and started.
That's
stubbing
what I
my
find
toe each day.
disingenuous.
You know, I'm
It does make
I'm
sense.
just like
It may not be true. It may not be fucking
Science.com article away from being an expert on
anything
this.
else, but it
But
certainly
for
makes
our
sense.
listeners and
I mean,
viewers who don't know what the Pauli exclusion principle is, maybe one of y'all can clarify that.
The Pauli exclusion principle states that any elementary particle with a half-integer spin cannot occupy the same energy state as any other identical in all quantum numbers defining the same exact elementary particle. So if you have two electrons and all four of their quantum numbers are identical, they cannot occupy the same orbital. And this is why electrons fill orbitals.
So
And is
thanks
it
for
true
Pauli.
that we really do not know what spin is? It's a sort
No,
of,
we do know what spin is. It is a form of intrinsic angular
don't need that
momentum.
anyway.
yeah, but angular momentum meaning does not mean it's
Meaning
spinning.
that it's a quantity that is conserved under particular transformations.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily actually something that is
Got no
spinning.
blood left.
Well, no,
so-
but there is an electron has angular momentum as an objective fact of reality. It doesn't matter that there's not an actual object spinning. Angular momentum really doesn't mean there's some physical structure rotating, or if it's orbital angular
Yeah, this is
momentum
true.
orbiting something. It's just a particular type of momentum that is conserved, and that momentum is angular.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
thanks
And
for Pauli.
in fact, PBS Spacetime just
I mean, well,
released
it
a
does,
video
I mean,
today on
Just
on
repeating the
spin.
same thing.
It's a good one. I fucking love Matt O'Dowd. He's just brilliant.
And of
So
course-
everyone, thank the Pauli exclusion principle in terms of fermions. Otherwise, well, chemistry and life wouldn't exist. So there we go.
Yeah, we should, we should definitely thank
Or the
those things
universe.
for giving us the wonderful thing that is life and everything,
Can't say that.
everything in it. Including the quote-unquote wonderful people we deal with.
I think we could also give praise to Wolfgang Pauli, otherwise he would have invented the principle and therefore we would not exist.
I mean, that
was a joke.
I know.
Anyways, I did want to comment on something else earlier about the initial gravitational singularity at time 0, if that's okay. And I'd like to hear Leo's thoughts on this too.
Go for it.
So I was doing research on singularities in general, particularly the one at the Big Bang, because it's kind of hard to wrap your head around and kind of conceptualize it in terms of a potentially infinite universe. Like we don't necessarily know the universe is infinite in extent, but if, for example, the models based on general relativity alone, extrapolating backwards, are correct, and that's a big if. At this point, I don't think most physicists would accept that. But if you do accept those simplest of models, technically,
I can buy
the Big
these
Bang
AWM
singularity
fine.
is not part of the universe,
Okay, well, we're gonna
of the
definitely buy one of
space-time
those.
continuum. It is
We'll
an
buy two of
endpoint
those.
to it.
Yeah, we'll buy
so you
three of
can
those.
get closer and closer to it, just like an asymptote, but you will never reach it. It's kind of like a limit, basically.
Is there anything? Oh, put it on the floor, did I?
And I thought that was pretty interesting because you can think of times getting shorter and shorter, or the time where you would reach the singularity and where you're going back, and those times are getting that time period is getting shorter and shorter, and the densities everywhere are rising higher and higher, and you can just extrapolate it backwards. And I thought that was interesting how you can phrase it that way,
Right,
but
so-
in such a way that you don't actually reach it. It's pretty mind-blowing. Limits are weird.
Limits are very weird.
Hey, did Leo and Andrew and Speed?
Nice. So restart. Yeah. It's a
Did you
fucking
see
restart.
the
Just when my bag's on the ground?
recent
You
thesis
bastards.
put out by NASA that a
Didn't even
mirror
see that.
universe was created at the time of the Big Bang, that time runs backwards?
Ooh.
That sounds like like something like the Carol Chen model or something like the Agari Groton model, just rehashed.
Actually,
It's a
no.
model
Actually,
that's
Rehashed.
been devised by a lot of different people.
wait. I remember coming across this. You know, it was one of the possible explanations because I actually, I was excited about. Oh, hey, there's a universe where time runs backwards, but apparently it was just one of the possible explanations about explaining why certain neutrinos seem to travel backwards. They seem to travel away from the Earth, rather than towards the Earth, if I remember correctly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not, it was just a thesis, an idea, hypothesis. It wasn't anything that was, they presented evidence, but it wasn't anything that was definitively proven.
Yeah, I'm just saying because a lot of people they spouted like the pop science version of that.
No,
Like,
I mean,
oh hey, a
she
new
was-
universe found.
she
When
was
you go look into it, no, that was one of the possibilities. You know.
The way to make a science article, you take all the science, blend it out, pour it out, and then you have 1% science left and 99% entertainment and what's the word for it? I forgot. Sorry about that.
Fake news.
No, I feel like there's a specific word for it, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember it. Nope, I can't think of it. Sorry.
I mean, just so you know, like the video I found It was put out by the Simply Space channel, which I'd never heard of before. And the title is, pardon me, NASA researchers discover a parallel universe that runs backwards in time. I mean, that sounds hyperbolic to me. I mean,
oh wow,
you would think if they actually
done it
discovered
again.
that universe and definitively proved it existed, it would, be on every news outlet in the fucking world.
Yeah, somebody'd be getting a Nobel.
Hey Leo, or I guess for everyone on the panel, I'd before we move on, I'd also like to ask another question about the, I guess more like a poll question kind of thing. So I was kind of, or I kind of like the thought that as you go back farther and farther back in time, kind of everywhere gets hotter and denser. So like, if you really think about that way, wouldn't it mean that there was once a time where the Earth, or in fact the very space you're living in, like your living room, your house, etc., was once a trillions of degrees and was contained in a small speck of a larger extent? Like, what do you guys think about that?
It's interesting.
I've already got a dry back. Don't need one.
No comment.
To know that the atoms, the energy in my body has existed. I shouldn't say has existed. We've measured it to go back as far as about 13.8 billion years.
Does somebody, nerdy rodent, I guess you've already done the recent clusters of black holes maybe spitting out stars? What's that?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
Did you just pull a Danny?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Hey, Speed, I'm gonna go. You can call me after you're done with this. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, so.
We may get Dr. Dan in here to talk about his discussion with Dr. P.E. earlier
Oh, that'd
today.
be cool. Otherwise, we're going to watch my video of them sticking a camera all the way up my urethra into my bladder, and then when people yell foreskin, it'll have a deeper meaning.
Oh yeah, that's a pleasant meaning, that's for sure.
I could play the video and we could comment on
welcome,
it.
Kev. You just came from
It's like
Space
National
Channel.
Geographic
Well, welcome back
going
to
into a
Space
cave.
Channel, Kevin.
Pretty cool. Enjoyed it.
I don't think you should be talking about your penis and then referring to.
I
deeper.
have him in my ears because
Deeper meaning?
I'm just literally running around doing
Might-
rubbish, Kevin.
Might send people spiraling
But
down into
I just got from space.
fantasies.
Ah,
Danny.
anyway. My bug video. Is Brainbug here yet? Nope.
No, haven't seen him.
He has not made an appearance. He has
I
not
wanted him to identify my two bugs that I had because I'm having trouble identifying them. One looks like a flesh eater. Botswana flesh eater.
I went out there a month earlier and on the fucking sun.
I know what
thing
his
I had
bugs
hanging
are.
Off the side of our front entry.
One's
There
very
was these
small,
bugs, they
and one's
kinda
but ugly.
ant-looking bugs. But they had like these
Bit too
pincers
technical.
on their
I won't
asses.
bother going in
Like,
spooky.
would
It's a
bite
bit
with
too
their ass,
technical
and
for them.
I looked it up on Google, and what they were was earwigs.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Dr. Dan. Dr. Dan is here to save us from that video.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. I did not want to see the inside of any part of Speed.
By the way, what Nerdy Rodent was talking about was an article they read in Ars Technica, which is not a source I would be getting my information from. It's a lot like Big Think. It's just not reliable.
Nobody wanted to see that video, Speed.
Wait a minute. What is it, like a video of your colonoscopy or something?
No, it's a dickoscopy.
It's a what?
It's actually a penisoscopy.
Dickoscopy?
Dickoscopy, yeah. I recommend it for everybody.
We ran off Dr. Dan.
Oh
So,
no. Oh, you ran away. Okay, so how'd your conversation with Behe go?
Sorry?
So, am I safe to say he went full magic at the point where
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he kind of did, right? So I would love to hear what other people thought if you watched, because I need to process it a bit, and probably I have to listen to it tomorrow. But yeah, I want to hear, what did everyone think? What did y'all think?
The faces that Behe would make when you were like, yeah, you said this, and that's like pretty much would say that's not correct, and this is why, and this is how we know. Like the faces he would make, I'm not gonna lie, they were making me laugh. Other than that, I thought obviously you did very well. I didn't think that most of his responses to what you said were really, they weren't very substantive, and it also seemed like he conceded quite a few things that if I were in his position, I don't know if I would have conceded.
And
Yeah,
before he went full magic, I think at some point he was talking about stuff that he had written, like in his book, that people didn't read it with the subtlety he wrote it, or something like that. That you're just missing something because my book is better than what you're saying it is. And I was thinking that people just found a lot wrong, and he didn't like the way that they disagreed with him.
I found a lot wrong in his book, obviously.
Yeah.
I told him about it. I started with the whole list. Yeah. I should say, let me just say about Behe that, you know, I do want to give him credit because, like, there's a lot of creationists that won't even have the conversation, right? Like,
yeah, that's true.
There's randos on YouTube that, like, will do, like, debates, right? But, like, in terms of creationists that have some kind of, like, scientific credentials, like Sal Cordova, Sal will talk to people, and whatever you think of Sal actually knows, like, a fair bit of cell bio and biochem. Like, he's actually fluent in, like, the stuff, right? And, like, the CMI people, like Rob Carter, won't talk to people. Like, I've talked to Paul Price and Robert, like, when CMI did the thing a few months back on genetic entropy, where, like, one of the people they named that they were responding to was me specifically, and I was like, hi, you can all come on and we can have a conversation. And they were just like, no, we don't want to talk. And I'm like, okay.
You ever had a discussion with Fuzz?
You know what? No, I haven't. And I actually really like watching his stuff. But the reason, I actually haven't reached out to him, and maybe I should. But two reasons
I think it'd be an
haven't.
interesting discussion, to be completely honest.
One is the place where we disagree is basically abiogenesis, and, like, I'm not a biochemist, and abiogenesis is kind of like, I'm kind of like, like, fine, whatever. People are figuring stuff out. Like, just this week they published a thing on, like, a ribosome core that's purely RNA that could make a 9-mer of polypeptide. And it's like, okay, like, we're figuring stuff out, so that I just don't find like an app talking about abiogenesis for an hour all that interesting, because, like, do we know the answer? No. Are we making progress on it? Yes. Like, okay, check back in 5 years and see where we are. And because he's an old Earth guy, then a lot of the other disagreements
Got to get water, didn't I, when I was there again?
On
mind
the
you.
science side of things, whereas Behe
Oh, and I don't have a sledgehammer either.
specifically
Bollocks.
testing the mechanism.
I should have bought a fucking
And
sledgehammer.
that means we can hash that out.
Oh, spooky. You've done it again.
What about if you didn't watch, I won't be offended, but if you did watch, what'd you think? Because I want to hear opinions, because I'm trying to, obviously, I want to do more of these, and I'm going to have Behe back. At the very least, we got to talk about his third book. And then, I'm planning on having a couple other people on in the near-ish future. So, what does everyone think?
Well, it might help. Well, I thought the discussion was great. It was respectful. You had him smiling here and there. I mean, he was cordial. He didn't seem too tense, but you could tell there were obviously points where y'all didn't see eye to eye.
Yeah, a little bit.
And he didn't like some of your challenges. And he said, we don't understand the mechanism, or we don't know the mechanism, and when you look for the mechanism, you don't find it, and then he just admitted he thought it was God, ID, the intervention
Right. There's no
of
mechanism.
something supernatural. Now, am I too strong to say he went full magic? Is that too harsh?
Yeah, so the thing that jumped out at me more than anything else in that conversation was when we were talking, towards the end, we were talking about the evolution of placentas in a very specific population of lizards. And at one
Yes.
point I was just like, okay, like, could this have been designed, like,
Thank
could
you,
this be
Spooky.
something supernatural? And
I
he
know.
was like,
Well,
"Yeah, could be." I was like, all right,
I've been trying to get all the stuff together,
about, like, fine,
thinking
this is a thing
about
that we saw
building a
happen,
well.
like, they
So I
did
finally buy the
placentas,
bucket.
they laid eggs, and then later on,
I got really
have placentas,
excited
they
because
take
I've
off
suddenly
birth.
got 2 of them.
And it's right there in front of us. So if you're saying it's an ongoing,
Oh,
and
well,
I
what
clarified,
can
I
I
said,
say?
so it could be an ongoing process.
Oh, we'll get back to base,
occurring right now.
right?
He was like, yep. I'm
And
like, all right, like,
I'll see what I've got.
completely
I don't. I'm pretty sure I don't have a pickaxe. I saw one the other day. I can always
So
go
you said
just
magic-
run across to.
He,
Oh, in
he
fact,
said
we
magic
passed it.
could be going on right now.
right now. Yep.
Well, he
said
didn't use
that
the word magic. That was my word.
design. Right. He said
Yeah.
that events that we observe in the present could be the result of design. is what he
You know, that blows my mind so much because here's the thing. Okay, if you look over the course of human history, how many natural phenomenon have been attributed to, as Scott puts it, magic or God, that have been proven otherwise over time? I mean, the list is almost infinite if you go back and look. And right in this day and age, and especially people like, you mentioned how Sal, he has knowledge, in science, but how can
Come on,
I
you
don't
never
see
know.
how they can legitimately believe what they're putting forward. When you look at the course of human history, and like I said, that anything that's
God
ever
damn it.
been attributed to God, that we know what the cause of it is now, is natural, causation.
It's I know Beaky specifically, and then other ideas in general don't like the accusation that it's a God of the gaps argument, that it's just saying, we don't know, therefore design, right? But
Which is what the argument is.
it sure does seem that way, right? Because and the
Well.
giveaway with that is you watch how fast the argument goes from,
Oh
"You
dear.
can't
Thank you,
explain
mate.
this,"
I'm sorry I'm not
to,
looking over much.
that's like no big deal.
I'm
anyway,
just
right?
concentrating on what
And
they're saying.
Specific examples will go from, this is a thing that cannot evolve, therefore it's designed,
Look at that.
to,
Give
as
me the
soon as we cross the
moonlight.
threshold, go, that's not a big deal for evolution.
Thank you for the
anyway.
likes,
That's
by the
just
way. Oh,
what's
who
around
gave me a
it."
thumbs
And
down?
you can see that with things like the HIV example. If
Is that
I was
you,
following
Spooky?
the blog fight in real time back in like 2007 with the HIV example, and it really did, in the span of a couple months, go from like HIV did nothing, there's no new interactions, blah, blah, blah,
Well.
to within a few months.
What's that you, Spooky?
oh,
Is that just because I
it
forgot
got
the
this new
pitch the
binding
thing?
site, but like, whatever. It's just like one binding site, and it's between a virus and the cell. Whatever, no big deal anyway. It went from it can't possibly happen to no big deal as soon as we were like, oh yeah, this is actually a thing that definitely evolved. And you saw that in real time in our conversation when the placenta thing, which still that little bit, those 5 or 10 minutes just blow my mind, because that went in the span of that conversation from, yeah, that's a big evolutionary advance, to no big deal, it was there the whole time.
No,
We don't
I
really
didn't think
know.
it was.
No,
I wonder if it was
absolutely
Anthony.
was not there the whole time. That is a ludicrous suggestion. There's no
No,
and
okay,
it's
yeah, no, I
funny
got that.
So, to me,
Oh, well,
it's
you never know.
so funny that, okay, we wouldn't even have
I've got a
science
hater.
if it wasn't for
Oh,
human beings
I'm not used to that.
accepting the
That's
idea
all. Just
of,
not used to having
I don't
haters.
know, and then go looking for an answer. And Christians like to point out that in the early days of all the sciences, in their early days, it was mostly people that believed in God.
Hello?
The bigger name scientists.
Hello?
But everybody
Oh.
believed in God back then.
Hello?
And it's like they want to say that, well, if it wasn't for
Wonder what
theists,
the leg was about.
science would have never came about. But what it really was is people were willing to accept the
lagging.
idea, I don't know, and then go looking for an answer. And it seems like all these Christians now, these creationists and
shovel.
intelligent design
Don't need a
Christians
shovel.
are afraid of admitting, I don't know. Like, if it's
I don't want to say. I take your point exactly. I don't want to say Christians as a whole because
no, not, yeah, that's right.
I mean, just my favorite example of like Francis Collins, who was, I mean, agree, disagree. His book, take it or leave it. This is Francis Collins, who's head of the Human Genome Project. His book was Language of God was, I think, the main title, and I forget what the subtitle was, but it was Language of God, and it was about DNA and stuff. And he's, as far as I know, he's devoutly religious, but like basically, it's almost like the old, pre-enlightenment kind of, we need to figure out how God made the universe work kind of approach, and like. That's fine. And this actually gets at Andrew's question down here on naturalism of the gaps, because there's a difference between God of the gaps and naturalism of the gaps. And I think it's, if I recall, it's Ken Miller. I think I've recalled making this argument that intelligent design and God of the gaps arguments more generally are science stoppers, I think is the phrase he uses, because once you throw up your hands and say, well, it's design, we saw that today, right? With Behe saying, well, it's not about the mechanism, we can't figure out the mechanism, blah, 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 blah. It's just saying that it's not a natural explanation, it's a design explanation. The difference is, if you are saying, no, there's a natural explanation for this, you're going to keep looking for that explanation. You're not going to stop. Right? So go ahead.
Okay, so naturalism of the gaps as opposed to God of the gaps. If you say it's God of the gaps, then you have you've got the gap from point A to point B, right?
Well, I got 2
and
tents
inside
as
the
well,
gap,
man.
if you say God of the gaps, you fill it in with
forgot
one
about
solid
those.
color.
And another
God,
military locker.
Yeah, period, right? But if you have naturalism of the gaps between A and B, you're going to fill it in with methodological naturalism, which means you are going to continue to color in the structure inside those 2 points and end up with further tinier gaps inside, right? So that is the difference. It's this willingness to fill the structure in more fully, basically, and have and not only that, but having the means to do so, because we know that we can if it is a natural process, then we can fill it in. We know that we can test it, right, and figure it out.
I didn't watch your debate.
Go ahead.
No, I wanted to ask you, Dan. I didn't watch your debate, and I was so if you responded to be here this way, then that's fine.
I want to be clear. It wasn't a debate. Just having
sorry. Your dialogue. So when he said that it could be an ongoing intentional process with respect to your lizard example, what I would have said, I would have just said, okay, well, I would, in terms of what explains, the Earth or the planets revolving around the sun, I would have asked, do you think there's an ongoing intentional explanation that further explains the orbit? And then wonder why he would say no.
Yeah, that's a good approach. That's an interesting question. I wouldn't have even thought of that. That's a really interesting question. So I kind of got, went down that idea of like, okay, it's designed. That gets us to the how, what, where, when of like that process. And his answer was that, well, it's not mechanistic. We can't explain the mechanism. It's just enough to invoke the explanation.
I'm guessing this is a base then.
Explanations is that whatever
it is in fact a base.
It's going to be consistent with the design explanation, right?
Yeah, it's unfalsifiable. Yeah.
Yeah. So the point is that
okay. Never mind.
Earth revolving around the sun, or any of these sorts of things. Why wouldn't he just say there's design that this is not? There's not any further explanation other than God's creative will or intentional states. I don't see why he would just, explain away the whole of physics that way. But presumably he doesn't.
Well, because he's not a physicist, maybe.
I think because he the point of intelligent design, and I don't know for people who are familiar.
Debate starting on SFT channel. Trinity versus Oneness.
First and foremost,
end stage ever. Okay, cool. Stick it in the chat.
That a religious explanation is actually a scientific explanation.
Stick it in the chat.
So you cannot covertly, like having unspoken rules of intelligent design.
SFT.
Overtly invert
Or actually, if you want to
supernatural
thinking about it,
expressions
maybe
and specifically Christian expressions. Right? You can't do that.
DM me in Discord.
Violates the point of the product. And it's specifically
Doesn't matter either way.
Case. Like you can look at like when the decision was issued. It was 1987, Edwards v. Aguilar, and you can look at when in all these publications that were designed for like K-12 schools, when the phrase creationism disappeared and when the phrase intelligent design appeared, and it's in drafts or editions of books.
I think when I get back to base,
and it's creationism on one side, scientific creationism or creation science on one side, and it's intelligent design on the other side. So it's the reason that you can't do that and just say like
it's gonna get really bright before I manage to get out and switch my
you
night
can't be
vision off.
intellectually consistent in the way that you just described because that violates the point of the PR campaign. Right? That's the problem.
Okay, but if you still like the idea that you could just substitute the terms, right? Why wouldn't he think, instead of God, take my usage of the term God or deity or divine, just replace them with intelligence? It's the same problem, right?
Yeah, they literally did that to
Same
the point where
problem,
you
but
could control F and like find like the definitions. The definitions are the same, but it's intelligent design in the later
Don't know,
editions
Kevin.
and
I
creation
don't know,
science in
Kevin.
earlier editions. And I don't know, Danny, are you familiar with the C design proponents list?
No.
Oh man, this is
Thank you, mate.
classic. So they found a draft of one of these textbooks that they did the control at the finding in place basically.
Oh, I have
because of
seen that, where you can see that C in the end, like in between. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was C. So instead of being creationist replaced with design proponent, it was C designed proponents is. So like they only got part of the word. It's an intermediate fossil in the evolution from creation science to intelligence.
There's a really funny story is that when I saw that, I was like 14 or 13 years old, maybe something like that, and I was a creationist, and I'm like, oh man, come on guys, y'all could have done better than that.
Hey,
like,
Gio.
I was like, I was
Welcome
like,
to the
it
stream,
was like
mate.
watching your,
Yeah,
your football
Kevin's
team.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Mets fans. You know it's true.
On the thing about naturalism of the gaps, so there's like a caveat I have to what
It's
you
not
were
a
saying.
real thing.
Yeah,
So,
it is a real
I think
thing,
that there could
philosophically
theoretically,
speaking.
like using a thought experiment, be a real thing. It's just that we don't see these kinds of things in the world, so it doesn't
Is
apply.
that me or is that other people that are?
What?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Yeah,
No,
that.
that's on my end. I'm on
Well,
this.
you know,
Hang
some
on a
people
second.
are that
No,
dumb.
I can.
They would
Oh wait,
invoke
no, never mind.
naturalism of the gaps.
I'm not
What were
hearing
you saying,
anything.
Dre?
Okay. So I mean, like, I was talking to Speed and Andrew about this. Imagine you see up in the sky, the stars just rearrange themselves, saying, "I am Jesus, I am Lord, I am coming." If something like that happened in real life, are we going to continue to try to understand that from a natural perspective and just like analyze it scientifically, looking for natural mechanisms to explain such a phenomenon? I don't think that would be the proper reaction. If reality actually had instances like that really did seem to point to a supernatural like reign over the natural world rather than a natural world operating according to its own mechanisms. I think that if we were confronted with an experience like that we shouldn't be trying to look for natural mechanisms anymore. That would indicate something supernatural.
What about it indicates something supernatural?
Well,
So, I mean, I guess, are you saying that if you saw the stars
No,
in the
he's
sky rearrange themselves to do that,
is
like
a
clearly
philosophical
forming that
naturalist,
message in the
so
sky,
he
that
would
you would
invoke
consider that plausibly to
naturalism
be
of the
considered
gaps.
a natural thing that could happen?
I would say arguably yes. That's the only precedent we have to go off of.
Well, I'll level with you, Drake.
If it weren't natural, the only other conclusion that we could reasonably come at is we don't know how to explain it, because supernatural does not. There literally is zero explicative power in it. It doesn't explain anything at all. It's an assertion
Unless
that
it's
this
real,
thing
in
that we
which
can't
case it would
actually
explain
explain is essentially explained because it happened because of magic, which isn't an explanation at all. There's no reason to consider something happening through magic when we don't have any precedent for that ever having been the case in any
Okay.
instance
I
whatsoever.
When
think
you're defining it out of existence like that, right from the get-go, though, you'll never accumulate that evidence.
What do you
Because
defining what out of
something
existence?
like that, because something like that can actually occur, and still yet you would not consider that to be evidence for the supernatural. So if something like that could occur, and you wouldn't consider it, then that stuff like that could be happening all the time, and you would just continue to be looking for a scientific, natural mechanism to explain such things. And I think that that's
Well, there would
not
have to be,
the
right?
Thank you,
road to
Trace.
go down.
Thank you,
Uh,
Trace.
If there weren't a mechanism for how it occurred, then how did it occur to begin with?
So I mean, like
This
basically,
is the problem with the supernatural.
What it
It
would-
essentially says that things occur, but there wasn't any mechanism that instantiated the occurrence of these events to see the things that
No,
we're
it
seeing.
doesn't say
Like
that.
it's just
I
it's
understand.
literally
We don't know
just
the mechanism.
incoherent, completely incoherent.
I understand what you're saying about there not being a mechanism that you don't understand how
there we
it's
go, you see.
occurring and things like that. I understand the objection.
Oh,
It is
shit,
a
I think
legitimate
you
objection
probably need to
to
turn
those
my-
kinds of theories. However, at the same time, like what such an event would suggest to me is that, you know, I am Jesus, I am Lord, I am coming. That's a pretty clear message and is suggestive of the idea of what it suggests in those sources about there being a supernatural being that can break the laws of nature and have it perform its own will. The fact that it doesn't operate according to the natural expectation of laws and mechanics and things like that. The fact that it seems rather to be a deliberate manipulation of the very constellations themselves. I would consider that to be evidence for the supernatural. My point, though, would be we never see such things. So ultimately, it doesn't apply. But if you're going to continue to go down this road of trying to look for scientific explanations, even if confronted with that, then I think that is a naturalism of the gaps, and that's a foolhardy approach.
I don't understand how it could be naturalism of the gaps when we don't have a precedent for literally any other type of explanation at any point as long as humans have been around, other than natural ones, regardless of the fact that we have made observations that completely contradict everything we thought we knew about reality. But what did we do? We didn't say, oh, it must be magic, we don't understand it. We said, this is really weird, but it's occurring in the natural world. So there's got to be a mechanism here for it. And then we went out and we found it.
Yeah,
So,
I want to say something before I
the
leave.
other point that I wanted to
I
make really
thought
quickly
Danny
is,
would.
if something like that happened, how do you know you're not just hallucinating it?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, Devin,
Good
do you
point.
want to respond to that quickly, and then I can say my piece, and then I gotta go.
I did have some stuff. So yeah, I'll try to make it quick.
Yeah, and the
so
channel owner might want to say something too at some point. So go
Alright,
ahead.
sorry.
Sure,
I'll make
go
it
ahead.
as quick as I can. So basically, you were talking about how we have no precedent. But I mean, like, so first I would ask if we have any precedent at all of that event itself ever occurring. So wouldn't it be like a kind of standalone event that you couldn't apply any kind of frequentist probability to it anyway?
Good point.
But regardless of that, like, if naturalism is to be considered meaningful, in my opinion, there has to be some conception about what it is that, you know, nature is like, the way that it operates, how to characterize it, in order to understand it in a substantive, meaningful kind of way, a legitimate thesis. But if you're understanding it from the perspective of anything goes, I think it does lose meaning as a kind of like a worldview or picture of the world.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to what both of y'all are saying. I don't have time to respond at all, but I wanted to give my comment on naturalism of the gaps, or gaps of the nat, whatever they say.
Whatever.
I just think there is a case of naturalism of the gaps if you can't yourself provide a reason for why you would side with a naturalistic explanation that you're unaware of, a mechanism, rather than an intentional explanation. But most people do have a reason for that, why they might think it's likely that there is some naturalistic mechanism rather than an intentional explanation. But if absent that reason, I think then they're just kind of randomly assigning a category of explanation, and I think that's epistemically irresponsible.
Correct.
I don't know if you could ever not have a reason for presuming something to be natural. There's never been anything that
You
has
could be
ever been
motivated reasoner.
There's never been anything that we have ever explained verifiably that's never been explained through anything other than the natural. So regardless of how unorthodox or out of the ordinary any event you observe is, the only precedent you have to work from at all is natural. So it can't in any way ever be fallacious to presume
he's
the
gonna go
only
full
thing
Steve
you've
McRae in a
ever
minute.
had for explaining anything ever.
But that's just
That's
not.
just-
That's not true.
There we
I mean,
go.
People
Well,
typically
that is
distinguish-
probably that. I just moved
People
it.
distinguish the natural versus non-existent, right? Like, I mean, like that, I think this is what Drace was saying, is that you want to make a meaningful distinction between natural and non-natural.
I do make a very meaningful distinction.
But you mean what
between
you
that,
mean
yes.
by non-natural is just simply doesn't exist, not a
No, that's not actually what I mean. What I mean by
that is-
something that is non-natural is something that which exists metaphysically externally to and independently of the natural world. I would argue that such a category is meaningfully, or is in no way meaningfully distinctive from the category of things that don't exist.
That
At
just means
least
they're the
until we
same.
get a
If there's no distinction,
Well, yes,
they're the
that's
same.
what of course, that was the point that I'm getting at, is that there is no meaningful distinction between those two categories. Thus, it's incoherent to say that something is supernatural. It's incoherent. It's like saying, well, this thing exists, but it exists north of the North Pole. That's just incoherent.
Yeah, that was my charge against you.
I think Leo wins this debate purely on account of how many words he can get out in one breath. And I wanted to hear from Dr. Dan on the point that was being made here, his feedback. And I also wanted to hear from Speed, who said that he might have something too. So what do you guys think?
Also, Andrew has a follow-up question. So make sure you ask it, Andrew.
So hang on. Yeah, am I? Yeah.
We can hear you. You're coming in
Okay,
great.
I thought I was muted. Sorry. Speed, go ahead, and then Andrew can go, and then because we're talking in the private chat, and I'll give my answer to Andrew's question because that kind of has my position on the whole question.
Yeah, okay. My brain has suffered from some genetic entropy listening to the conversation since the time when I actually wanted to say something. But okay, one of the reasons why I'm a naturalist is because all of the things that I have experienced in my life, that I remember, that I comprehend, have all been of a natural nature. And trying to define what that natural nature is a little difficult. It has something to do with consistency and with the way objects behave in space and time and all of that. And nothing supernatural happens outside of a few bad drug experiences I've had. So, if suddenly something wrote in the stars,
it's very funny.
Jesus was whatever. I could look at that as a one-off event, right? First of all, I'd have my blood alcohol level checked. If that checked out fine, I would strongly consider believing at that point, just because of the magnitude of that event. But the thing is, if I had been brought up in a world where, since I was a child, there were frequent supernatural events of the nature of intentional events, like events that we would only usually see from an agency, that sort of thing. If I were brought up in that kind of a world, then I would believe in the supernatural, right? But I'm brought up in this regular world.
Okay.
So if I see something really one-off happen, I may resort to what I would call naturalism of the gaps. Like Danny said, I'd say, okay, I am going to withhold. Like if somebody tells me about some supernatural event that I cannot explain through any means, right? Then I've got from point A to point B, I've got a gap, and I'm more likely going to apply naturalism of the gaps. And I think this was Leo's sentiment, basically, that if we only see this thing once, then why would we look for, this agency type thing? But I mean, if we saw this shit all the time, we would obviously be believing in supernatural things, right? It's just that we don't.
And Steve, just real quick to quote you from a past stream, I like the way you put it when we were talking about naturalism, the gaps in the previous stream, and I might, be paraphrasing what you said. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were saying, well, we shouldn't look at that phrase as pejorative. Naturalism of the gaps just means methodological
naturalism, right?
No, it doesn't. It means philosophical naturalism.
What's the best explanation we've ever had for anything that's ever been verifiably explained? Natural mechanisms. Why would we not presume that anything, regardless of how out of the ordinary it is, that we observe in reality would at least plausibly be explained through natural mechanisms.
Yeah, but if I
So,
started
the whole thing
seeing,
about the whole thing about the example is that it's breaking all sorts of natural mechanisms, all
How
the
do you
ones that we
know?
understand
How do you
by
know?
doing that. Well,
Yeah, how do you know there aren't natural mechanisms?
do we not understand things about astrophysics? Do we not
Not
understand how
everyone.
gravity? Yeah, so I mean, like,
Not everyone.
insofar
What if there
as
was an
He's
insofar
such
as
a
the
bad
world
reasoner
normally-
sometimes, dude.
Insofar as the world normally works,
What if you're hallucinating?
a certain way, and all of a sudden you see it breaking, and just randomly there doesn't seem to be any law associated with it. For example, it's just a one-time event. So I mean, like, you know, and the way you asked before about how we know that we're not hallucinating, and the way that I usually frame the example is that it's a worldwide phenomenon, so it's confirmed on the news, everybody's seen it, the neighbors are talking about it, that it's known. And so I mean, but the way that you're talking about it, though, that no matter what, it's going to be naturalism, that does seem to make it an unfalsifiable and ultimately meaningless proposition.
That isn't exactly what I said. I said no matter what,
Ouch.
the only precedent we have is for natural explanation. So the only way to approach it is from a naturalist framework.
Right,
So
and
the only way we can try to understand it is through naturalism.
Well, Leo, yeah, and just to
Yeah.
put a-
Does that mean it's
just a
natural?
little,
No, it doesn't. Does it mean it's
ending
supernatural?
on what he said,
No, it doesn't. Does it
is
mean it's
that
not
all Leo's
supernatural?
talking about is
No, it
deduction.
doesn't.
Okay, we've never
There's the
seen
key.
anything but a naturalistic explanation. You know, we've gone by 1 million white houses. You know, we're
Where did I put that well?
we have
Oh, yeah.
warrant to believe the next house is going to be white. Now, maybe it won't be. You know, maybe down the line, you know, something supernatural will be discovered, but thus far it has not.
And to add on to that, maybe we do find a house that isn't white. But I'll bet that if we did find a house that wasn't white, just to use the expression that John was using, that there's a natural, it's plausible, more plausible than anything else, that the explanation for why that house is not white is a natural one.
Yeah,
I mean,
for something like mundane, like the colors of houses, of course, it would be suggestive that
Well,
it's
no,
just
I was using that to demonstrate that
yes,
we
I know,
came
I know.
across something
It's just
that
that
out of the
it's just
ordinary.
the imagery. It's just the imagery there, though. Like, I understand what you were trying to do. It's just the imagery of White House versus Black House. The White House in that scenario, though, was natural explanation, as far as I understood what John was saying. So natural explanation, natural explanation, natural explanation, and then all of a sudden you have a black one, which would appear to be a non-natural explanation. So now what do you do with it? So I mean, like,
well, I mean,
again,
hold on a second. Wait a minute. Let me just correct you.
What the fuck did I do with it?
wasn't making the analogy that white houses represented natural explanations and that the black house would be a supernatural thing. Okay,
So,
the point is, the point is what I said about induction. When you see the answer is natural, like Leo's been saying the whole last half hour, in everything that we have ever explained, then you have warrant to believe that any further
Whoa.
explanations you discover
Buckets. What did I
will
do with the
be
buckets? I
of
came
natural
in.
causation.
I put the guns there.
Yeah, so I'm just considering your argument from induction, and I mean, like, so it would just be like an induction from simple
Looks like it
enumeration,
should be here.
and that every single thing that we've ever experienced has been natural, and so this unknown thing, no matter how crazy, must be natural too, and we'll continue to look for stuff.
Well, plausibly is natural.
Yeah.
Is what
Yeah,
I
no,
would say.
I'm sympathetic
kinda
to
weird.
an argument by simple enumeration that way, because I agree that everything that we have seen up to this time has been natural. But I have to be honest that my reaction to seeing that in the sky is not going to be that argument from simple enumeration. It's that event which stood out to me as something that was indeed not natural. And I mean, like, again, it's because it's breaking all of the known laws. It's doing
How do
crazy
we know
shit.
that?
So all of the known laws, do we not know laws of astrophysics and about how stars
Yeah, we do.
are oriented in the
Image.
expanse? You know, like general
Well,
relativity. and
what
all
if
that.
an extraterrestrial rearranged has some tractor beam that
Yeah.
can move stars?
There you
That
go.
would,
So,
but
like,
that would be natural. So I mean,
Right.
what is
I
that
would
weird
be-
bet that Christians
Yes.
talk about with the devil? And you know, you may as well make the bet that God
Yeah.
exists.
So,
What is that called?
Pascal's wager.
I mean,
Pascal's
what
wager.
if they had
Yeah,
a
if I
tractor beam?
saw that star shit, Pascal's
That was
wager
the
is gonna
argument.
become a
What
thing with
if
me,
they have a
and I'm
tractor
gonna go
beam?
to church.
So you could do
Did you
that
get
like
that?
with the. I think that's going somewhere, proposing like an alien intelligence rather than a divine
That knows about
supernatural
Jesus.
being. The only thing that would be more suggestive for supernatural for me is the fact that it's referencing a certain theological paradigm in the words themselves.
Well, I don't know. They've just
so
disappeared.
It seems to be indicating that source as where it's coming from, and I
They
don't
have
see any
literally
motivation for
disappeared.
an alien intelligence doing any such thing. So
Yeah,
I mean,
and
like
if
there
they
would
did-
still be.
That doesn't mean they can't.
Okay, if they did,
No, it
did
doesn't
do
mean they
an alien
can't, but it means
intelligence, then
Jesus
obviously
exists, though,
they
doesn't
want
it?
us to go to church, so I'm still going to church.
Exactly,
you gotta
Speed.
cut
Well
that
done.
out. Speed,
Speed's
you gotta cut
smarter.
that out
Speed's
because
smart man.
Stella's gonna fall back in love with you again.
Oh, he is, yeah.
That's his favorite thing, Pascal's.
Well, he was going on last night about the part where I said that, it could be that we're getting dumber, right? Dan.
Yeah.
Did you have something, Dan?
Oh, I was going to say, before we
Dan.
move on from methodological naturalism and naturalism of the gaps, can we get to Andrew real fast? And then
Yeah, let's get to Andrew.
Sure.
Yeah, I just had a question about
Maybe I'll put
an
it in
email I've
here.
gotten
There we go.
from
That's where
a
I put it.
different professor, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And
Right, let's go and place one
so
of these down
basically,
somewhere.
I was asking him about naturalism
Over
of
here,
the
I
gaps,
think.
Dr. Dan, and phrasing it in such a way that the creationists
I've already
often
done
phrase
that.
it like, we don't know X phenomenon yet.
Oh.
But we assume it must be natural anyway. Like that's the
Joe, and I
common
need the rope.
way they phrase it. So that's how I phrased it to him, and he gave me an a tangent example or a
Have you noticed how Danny didn't
Sorry,
get
Danny.
involved in that conversation either?
But basically, he said.
Just realised that
first,
he's gone.
like, if-
I was
if
expecting
you
him to go,
walk
no,
down
you
the
can't say
street
that, that's
and a
not
baseball
sensible.
drops right beside you,
But he didn't.
and it looks like an ordinary baseball, but you don't see anyone looking down that might indicate that you
Interesting.
threw the ball, and you don't see anyone around you nearby. So you have no idea where the baseball came
There we
from, ignorance, but you assume it was dropped by someone or something, and in this context that would be naturalism of the gaps. And then the next step would be to go to a local business place and look at their security camera footage and basically use
Should I put it over
the
here?
parabolic
Maybe.
trajectory to find that it came
This
from a
is less
certain
likely to be
height.
found, isn't it? And
And
it's nearer the base entrance.
then you would look for,
Yeah,
for
fuck it.
more
Why not?
evidence, and in this situation you would find a woman who had recorded the baseball coming from a certain window, and at that point you reach the limit of your knowledge, and you assume that someone in the window, some kids who were caught on the recording, dropped the baseball, and that's reasonable given the evidence, but you can't actually
So what I should really do is
disprove
chop the
that
tree
God
down.
magicked the ball out of thin air.
Let's
And
do that. Let's chop
then
the tree
finally
down
he
first.
says you don't need to know the exact origin of the baseball to know that followed a certain path and it came from that specific balcony, and that naturalism of the gaps is BS because it frames the argument such that if you don't know the origin of the ball, you can't truly know anything about the ball, or you don't know anything about the origin of the Big Bang, therefore you don't know anything about the further evolution of the universe after that.
I don't know if that would be naturalism of the gaps, or if that's what naturalism. It's not saying that like we can't understand the evolution of the universe. It's simply saying that to assume, because we don't understand how the universe originated, if it's fallacious to assume that it's God, then it must be equally fallacious to assume that it wasn't God. Except the reason that it's not fallacious in the latter is because we have a precedent for explaining things without having to appeal to supernatural things.
Can I take a different tack at going after that? Because
Yeah.
I think the problem with the it's just naturalism of the gaps argument is, I don't think we have to look at the track record. I think we could just look
16
at
stones.
the endpoints of each view, right? So for a God of the Gaps argument, once you invoke a supernatural explanation, as we saw today when I was talking to Behe, that's the end. What mechanism? It was a design. It was supernatural. Done. That's the end of the conversation. The point when you're operating with methodological naturalism and you're trying to find explanations
20
is that
metal
you are trying to
sheets. Are
fill
you
the
fucking
gaps.
kidding me?
Right, that is the point of the
99
exercise.
nails,
To fill the gaps.
20 planks I can
The
do.
point,
4 mortar I've
end
got.
state for God of the
So we've
gaps
got everything
is to
except the
stop trying
stones.
to fill the gaps. It is to preserve the gaps. So to say, oh, you're just invoking naturalism of the gaps. No. We're doing methodological naturalism, and we're doing
Yeah,
our level
methodological
best
naturalism
to
doesn't
fill
suffer
in
from
the
this,
things we don't understand.
to be frank.
There's not an equivalence between those two goals, right? Once you invoke, we don't know, and furthermore, we can never know, that is the end of the conversation. There's no reason if once an ID proponent or a creationist, same thing, different conversation, once someone like that identifies a thing that could not evolve, they're going to stop looking, right? There's no point. It can't happen. There is no point to try to do further investigation into that system, right? There's just we've explained it. We literally can't know more about it. That's the end. If you operate under the framework of methodological naturalism, you never hit that point, and that's the point of it, right? You can always keep looking for explanations. And then to Leo's point, in terms of like the historical record, as we keep going, we keep finding the explanations. So why should I stop right now? It's a totally different paradigm. One of them has the weight of thousands of years of recorded history on its side of success of finding more explanations, and the other one doesn't. But that record
And we
is
need
immaterial
16.
to the fact that they're not equivalent. So when you get that, like, oh, it's just natural as the gap, no, because they're not equivalent positions, and that you don't just say,
So really,
oh,
I should
well,
buy
there's
two.
an explanation,
Got one of them.
whatever. No, the point of naturalism is that you
Really,
don't
I
try
need to
figure
buy
out
two
a
then.
mechanism,
Yeah.
right? You never stop that part. So
Yeah,
they're not equivalent arguments. And you can put aside any specifics of any specific case. The fact that the paradigms lead to those different activities on the part of the people who hold them, that is sufficient to invalidate it's just naturalism of the gaps as an argument.
Yeah, I mean, and you just crystallized something in my head. It's beautiful the way you said that. Is that as soon as they invoke, God did it. That ends
Love
the
it.
discussion
Evangelos in the
because
side
they're
chat.
not willing to search for the mechanism. In their mind, this explains it. No further analysis is needed.
I will say, I didn't come up with that. That wasn't me. I think that was Yours who I got that from, I think, but that wasn't me.
If I can chime in with my usual contrarian self, I think David wanted to say something. Is that you speaking up?
Yeah.
I'll get behind you. You first.
Yeah, I'll do it real quick. We had this exact conversation and we pinned Ontangelo down, and I will tell you what Ontangelo's answer was. We basically pinned him down, and I said, that's it. Once you say God has done it, that's it. It's all over. You're not going to continue to search for natural explanations. And he said, no, it doesn't end there. His answer was that he would continue to search out
how God
to
did
figure
it.
out which God did it, and why God did it, and what the purpose was, and the meaning was, and those kind of things. That was his answer to this exact question. So.
I've been chatting with him in the side chat. Otangelo doesn't see the difference between a claim and an explanation. He also doesn't know what the mechanism is. God's intelligence is not a mechanism. It doesn't explain anything.
I don't know, it's the thing. I mean, if you say...
okay, try and explain how my intelligence...
We don't know what it is.
The origin
it must
of
be
life.
X.
I wouldn't see how that's possible.
So I do think Otangelo's answer is evasive, and it's not really answering about mechanism. It's conveniently invoking other things other than the mechanism. But
Peter, I've been following that discussion between you and Angelo in the chat. I just want to say, you are one of the most hopeful individuals I've ever encountered, because you say in that conversation, do better, Otangelo. And I just don't see the possibility of that ever happening.
Well, to be honest, I've had a few.
Can we let Dre finish his point?
Recent conversations with Otangelo, and I think if you at least can treat each other with respect, you can have a decent conversation. You might not be able to change Otangelo's way of thinking, but there are a lot of people watching, and they might take away something from it, and that's why I have this conversation.
Okay, where's Otangelo's?
Nice comment, Gio.
He
I
said,
like it.
Grace, continue what you were saying. I was interested.
Hey, thank you. Hang on, hold on a second.
I mean, he was cut off and hasn't been allowed to finish his point yet.
It's okay. Go for it.
It seems to be something we bitch about a lot here, so I wanted to make sure he had his time to speak.
Yeah, I was muted when I tried to interject.
I just want to say goodnight to everybody. I'm going to call it. Thank you for Speed. As always, thank you for having me come on. Always
You are such a wuss, Dr.
I think I'm going in now.
AJ's channel.
Okay, right.
I'll be on the
Yeah.
channel tomorrow afternoon.
I may as well.
Bye.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Drace.
Okay. So basically, I mean, this response was to Dan, so it's unfortunate that he had to bow out. But nevertheless, if he hears it, he can tell me if he feels like what he makes of it.
If it was too Dan, I'll just do that. I'll be right in there. Don't worry, peeps.
Flip side, but for the naturalist, there's a parallel problem, which is that if it is in fact supernatural, because they never stop asking those questions, and because they never have to make a decision on it being supernatural, they can always just keep going and asking and investigating and never make up their mind. That it could be true that supernaturalism is the answer, and yet we would never make that determination because we're always on this path of inquiry. There has to be some kind of like meaningfulness if we're genuinely interested in whether or not it's true or false, then there has to be some way of deciding that. And if we're saying that there isn't one, then I really do think that that's a problem.
Well, no, there is one. It's called faith.
So on
The big problem is
I
that supernatural
represent
things
your
are unfalsifiable.
on Tangela, did I represent your answer correctly? I did the best I could. If you want to correct me on any of that, you certainly welcome.
Yes, no, you did not misrepresent me. I agree with you. Once you have figured out that intelligence is a more case adequate explanation for the physical world, then you can go further and ask, what is the identity of that intelligence? Can we figure it out?
I would be more interesting in what mechanism did that intelligence use to create everything, and that is the part that no one seems to be able to answer.
Of course not.
I wouldn't care that much about who the intelligence is. First, I want to know how he did it, and if we can verify that he actually did it, then we can investigate. Well, okay, who is this guy?
Well,
Until
Peter,
then,
I actually answered your question, and I said
no, you didn't.
The causal mechanism is God's power and His supreme intelligence, and we have an example in regards of what intelligence can do by humans, by ourselves. We know that we can make all these things which I wrote in the side chat, like codes, languages, information systems, machines.
Otangelo,
I'm finished.
No, I'm going to cut you short. I'm intelligent. Look at my picture.
Let him talk. Peter.
I'll give you an example to steel man your position.
No, Peter. I don't like that.
Then keep it short.
You also ramble and nobody interrupts you, so I expect you the same respect towards me. Okay? So
hold on a minute, Otangelo. You've got to be briefer, because people jump in when you go on for more than a minute. We have a rule that you've got about a minute, per conversation. So try to be brief.
I don't disagree with that, Speed, but I think that if we're going to apply that rule, then everybody who's making a point needs to kind of adhere to.
Yes, everybody.
I will try my best. I just said that I will try my best. In fact, I was the first one out of all of us to say that, because all of us are guilty of doing it.
Because I mean, I sympathize with
instead of rambling on about the rule, let Otangelo finish so we can continue the conversation.
There you go.
Much more productive.
That's a good idea.
Just making sure we're all in agreement here.
Yep.
Okay. Only intelligence can make machines, factories, and blueprints. Chance can't.
Exactly. So now I am intelligent. Look at my profile picture, right? So, how do you get to the explanation for that profile picture to being there? But with just telling me to you that I'm intelligent. So now you can replicate it.
Well, Peter, if I would have absolutely no knowledge about who made that picture, just on looking it, I would conclude that somebody
That's not answering my question. My question was a yes or no question. Can you repeat my
Peter,
question back to
those
me?
are hard. Those are hard. You got to do better than that, Peter.
No, hold on.
You can't.
Angelo,
just
can you
do yes or
repeat my
no's.
question to you
Nobody
back
likes
to
that.
me? Because I don't think you heard my question.
He's asking you if intelligence is all you have.
Hold on.
What are you reproducing?
Hold on. He was talking. Hold on. Otangelo, can you repeat my question to you back to me?
No, repeat it again, please.
I said I am intelligent. Now look at my profile picture.
Oh, I so wish I wasn't.
How was that
I could get in and make a comment then.
Using what as
Intelligent,
base
but bit
materials?
racist, maybe.
Using
I know where
what
that comes
as
from.
a mechanism?
How
Because
Lewis
obviously to
Hamilton's.
you already know the mechanism. Because I'm intelligent.
Right. So what?
So do you now know? Do you now know how I made it?
Yeah, you used a pencil, paper, whatever you used, and
But that's not intelligent.
That's first of all, that's wrong. Second of all, I didn't ask what I was using. I asked for a mechanism.
Well, your intelligence, right?
My intelligence is the basis of me actively creating stuff. But what is the mechanism that I use to create? And what are my source materials?
I said many times, Peter, that we don't know how the interface mind-body works.
Exactly. So now you admit to not knowing God's mechanism.
Yes, Gio.
Now you admit to not having an explanation for anything. All you have is a guess based on a claim you can't even prove. And the claim is that your God is intelligent.
Okay,
There's no way that you can prove that.
Okay, does it work?
Does
your
what work?
God? No.
Does the interface mind-body work? Yes or no?
I have no clue.
With respect to what?
First of all, I don't have a clue whether or not God has a. Please, guys, please don't interrupt me. I have no clue whether or not your God has a body.
Yeah, it's
I
begging
have
the
no
question,
clue whether or not he has a mind.
I asked about you.
With that
Does
body.
it work?
I asked about you. I asked about you. Did it work?
But I'm not God, right?
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. I'm not talking about what. Wow, people, please stop. I asked about you. When you painted the picture, did the interface mind-body work in order for you to make the picture? Yes or no?
It worked, and it wasn't enough to create a picture because I needed a mechanism. I needed tools, and I needed source materials.
Stop. Okay, it worked. Fine.
I know you want to stop there, but that is not where we stop. Because that's not an explanation.
Okay, guys,
Peter, please let him
you need
finish
to allow
his
each
sentence.
other to talk.
Okay,
Thank
finish.
you, mate. I know what he's going to say, but please let him say it.
Yeah, because all I'm hearing on this is interrupting.
If it works, then it means that it can work as well for God. That's the entire point.
No, you demonstrate God.
Wow. Are you now? Hold on. Are you now equating me to God? Damn, now he left.
Can I?
Well, apparently, I'm a god, so I will, from now on, require all of you to worship me at least once a day, and we can do that really brief. I mean, pray before dinner. That would be great.
Peter, I know where the source material comes from, so you know.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
I
No,
think
you
I
don't.
do. I recognize it.
Well,
Does
you know we're
Peter,
one
wait,
of.
Peter, does this now mean that when I finish during sex, I have to yell out, "Oh, Peter"?
That's a good one.
It most definitely does.
Oh
So,
boy.
so
Yeah,
Angelo
yeah,
left.
To get back to you, you know where one source material came from.
Sure.
From a particular Sir Lewis.
Yes, indeed.
All of the other
Lewis.
things came from something different.
Yeah. Okay. So so when he says the mind body, the mind body did it work? Okay, what he's actually doing there is assuming that the mind body connection doesn't work. What he's doing there is assuming that the mind is different from the brain, right? Because actually it's your brain that does those things, not your mind, right?
Yeah,
So,
and
again,
another thing is it implicates.
You could be a little bit pedantic there, and say
Yeah, but
that
it
he's
implicates that
begging
God
the
has a
question.
body.
He's begging the question of dualism by implying that the analogy for mind and intelligence creating things being similar to the way God does it is, of course, begging the question of dualism.
Simus,
So I'm just
I
saying.
have to address my son who's in the side chat. Yeah, spooky bed hair. From now on, you're Jesus.
Hey, just real quick. So the other thing that Otangelo was doing there is I found it interesting. He asked Peter, "Does the mind-body connection work?" For achieving, making
You're
this
not
thing.
listening to me.
But yet he would claim that God is a disembodied mind.
Exactly, that was the point that I was going to, because he always claims that God does not have a body. So making the equation between me and God was a silly thing to do, because first of all, it would put me on equal footing with his God, which I don't think is what he would want to do. And second of all, it goes against all other claims that he has made that God has a body.
Sometimes.
So
I just wanted to say really quickly that there is not an identity relation between the mind and the brain.
No, I would say I'd say they're very dissimilar.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I don't know how you can know that because the mind.
Well,
body,
I mean,
as
there's properties. Well,
dualism.
I can.
Sure. We'll get to that in a second. But dualism.
Just like there isn't an
dualism hasn't been shown to be true, as far as I'm aware.
Well, of course,
I'm not arguing
you
for its
can
validity.
You can be a physicalist and assert that the mind and the body are not identical,
right?
Or that the mind and the brain are not identical.
Sure.
No, but who
I don't
made
think
that claim?
I think identical in the
I would say
Magnesian
that, yeah.
sense, maybe. But to say that there isn't a one-to-one relationship between the processes of the mind and the brain, I think that's where
I don't think
the
there is. No.
difficulty is.
Isn't the mind?
I think there is.
Wait a minute. Isn't the mind simply an emergent property of the brain?
I think
Yes,
so,
which would mean that it's not identical with it.
It means it has qualities that the brain does not.
Yeah.
Just
well,
like
okay.
just like temperature has properties that atoms don't. There isn't an identity relation between temperature and all of the atoms in a room.
And the thing is, too, like, there's properties of water as a fluid that's dissimilar from properties of water as an individual molecule.
Okay.
Right?
This is how emergence works, yeah.
This is sort of the type of thing that emergence tries to explain. I mean...
Right. But don't you think that both the properties of water and the properties of temperature are contained within the sets of atoms oh my god.
I would say...
or H2O.
Yeah, I would say the properties consist in the things they emerge out of, but there still isn't an identity relation between them.
Yeah, I didn't say I didn't say there was an identity relation there, did I? I corrected.
Well, I mean, when I hear one-to-one,
if you mean in the Leibnizian sense, there is an identity, but I think there is a one-to-one relationship.
Which would be an identity relation.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. An identity relationship would be if something maps to itself. Right?
Yeah, there are two things that are identical. If there's a one-to-one correspondence between two things,
how
could they not be identical?
Well, I think that within the set. So all the properties of the mind correlate at least to some property in the brain. And the brain may have more properties than that. In fact, I think it does. So it's not identical.
Well, I mean... So,
it's contained within the set. That's what I mean by what I was saying.
if I can steelman your position, are you
Please
trying
do,
to
yeah.
say that? Are you trying to say that like all the properties of that all the properties that the mind has are contained like are also contained like within properties of the brain?
Yeah.
Okay, I would
I think,
disagree.
I think more basically what he's saying is you can't have a mind without a brain. So
course not.
anything that the mind, any attribute that the mind has to be included in the brain.
Yeah.
I agree
mean,
with you.
I agree it's emergent. Okay, I mean I don't think that's contentious in any sense, but in this room. And by
Wait,
which I
what?
just simply mean that all of the properties of the brain contain all of the properties of the mind.
So for me, this is a position I hold tentatively, but me and Speed will disagree on this point. But to me, the mind is more kind of. I don't think it depends on the material. I think you can think about minds in terms of processes, not necessarily as having a strict relation to the material that it's based on.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that is if the process is dependent upon the material, then the material logically contains the processes.
Yeah,
Well,
the mind would consist in physical processes, but the mind is the mind is physical, but it isn't material.
Well,
Much the same way that Facebook is not material. Facebook isn't made of anything.
Well,
it
it
consists.
is, isn't it?
Oh, okay,
Made
so
of-
how much does Facebook weigh?
Well, it presumably it weighs it is contained within the server data and the software.
Yeah, but there isn't an
and
identity relation between those. The server data isn't Facebook.
Well, there is,
hold on.
obviously.
I think
there is.
wait. I think what Peter has been saying this
It's
whole
digital
time. when he said
information,
that-
is it not? So it's
when he
contained.
says a one,
It's contained on
when he
hard
says a-
drives and down
when he
wires
said-
in electrons, etc., signals.
I'm a
Which
bit
is
distracted by the
when
way.
he said,
And that has
hold
a
on.
weight. That actually has a physical weight.
Can I just say this real
Atencio.
quick, please? Just one little sentence. Look, he's saying when he said one-to-one relationship, I'm thinking that he's absolutely correct because name one thing without a brain that has a mind. There's nothing that has a
Yeah,
mind
that's not what I'm
that doesn't have
saying.
a brain.
That's not
Yeah.
what we're saying.
Yeah,
I
all
don't
I'm
mean
saying
the
is that
brain
the
to the
mind and the
mind.
brain are
I
not
mean-
the same thing.
I mean the mind to the brain. And that's
The
a subtle
mind is to the
distinction.
brain what digestion is to like your stomach and your intestines and everything like that. That's what I would
Yeah,
say.
and all of these are physical things, materials.
Yes, I
And they
agree.
all- they
I
have a
made
weight.
that statement. They're physical,
And they
but
have a
I wouldn't
weight.
argue they're material. I don't know how much the
They have
mind weighs.
chemicals. Well, if you want to, if you want to be, like, push the analogy as far as you can. Of course, it weighs of electrons and neurons.
But yeah, but
and
then you'd be weighing
and the wet
electrons,
stuff.
not the mind. The
Yeah,
mind
but-
is not electrons. You would be
Yeah, but-
weighing a set of electrons. You
Sure,
wouldn't be weighing
yes.
the mind. You can't weigh the mind. It's not a
So-
material thing.
So I think
Yeah,
an appropriate example, I
That's
would
not correct.
I would say like there's a distinction between kind of, and this is a weird position to take. I would say there's such a thing as mental properties, and I don't know, for instance, if you can reconcile mental properties in terms of physical properties. Like, I don't think the question
I
of
don't think that's
like how.
necessary, though.
Well, if you're saying that the mind and the brain are equivalent, right? That there's
No,
like a
I'm
one-to-one
not saying they're
correspond-
equivalent. I'm saying that all of the processes of the mind are contained within the brain.
Well,
Okay.
that
Okay,
I
but
would
in that
agree with. Yes,
case-
all of the processes, but not all of the properties.
Right,
Well,
but in that case,
and by
I-
extension, all of the properties must
I don't think that
also
would follow.
derive
Well, but
from the brain. I mean, they may be emergent again, but I don't think saying they're emergent is any way of saying that they're separate from the brain. I just think
Well,
they
no,
follow
I
from
know,
the
but if-
processes of the physical processes of the brain.
Of course.
Simos, if you
Right.
take that seriously, though,
Yeah.
would you agree that a question like how much does the thought, for instance, the sky is blue, right? There should
Yeah.
be a mass that corresponds to, like, there should be some property that relates to, like, other physical objects. Like, I can ask, like, what does the mass of that thought weigh?
Yeah.
And that question doesn't seem to be like one that's coherent.
Well, I think
agree.
it's non-informative, but it has an answer.
I
mean,
don't
yeah.
think-
Why is it incoherent? I mean, we talk about computers. Computers weigh more. The more information you put into them, the more they weigh. So I would think that somehow, some way, a thought from a human brain would have some kind of mass. Just like, I mean, anything.
I think if you're a physicalist, then you have to be committed to that point.
Yeah, the processes that produce the mind have mass, but the mind itself doesn't.
What did you do to my Otangelo?
Well, the thing is,
I don't know why you're making that distinction.
I'm still talking to Otangelo at the moment, and I'm trying to get him to come back in because I think he.
Well, why do you leave?
Because a lot of people were talking at the same time. I was hoping. I was hoping to address one single point. And when I asked Otangelo to state my question back to me, everyone else jumped in, and so that didn't help because Otangelo didn't hear my question.
What you guys don't understand is when Otangelo comes in, it's you've basically you've got to be very, very quiet, and you have to just let it roll. You know?
That's loud. Turn that down a bit.
And it's never been overturned or revised. Intelligent design case in 2004 didn't get to the
sorry, guys.
level. It was operating at just a state level.
I think we're having quite
I
an
realize
interesting conversation.
RJ is talking.
I think we're having quite an interesting conversation without Angelo, so I don't think we need him back in. But
yeah, the thing is when he says that we know what an intelligence can do. We have an example of that. Every time an intelligence does something, it does it with limbs, tools, muscle fibers, you know, and we do not have an example of that for God,
chemistry.
right?
I think
and he doesn't get that.
I think he is begging the question about dualism. Yes, when he gives his analogy.
Yeah, I didn't hear the conversation about the mind and how he thinks that just saying an intelligent does it. Your intelligence doesn't do a goddamn thing at night while you're dreaming at all, other than
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does.
Well, not a hell of a lot.
Here's the thing too, like, so
we'll get to it, immutable. Don't worry.
Yeah, I was gonna just kind of respond to the previous.
So
one.
can I
before we move on,
quickly
I wanna say
interject
something
what?
Peter,
John, hold on.
Why don't we let John go first?
Yeah, all I was going to say is that Otangelo tried to equate Peter to himself in saying that he goes on and on and on. But the difference is,
that's not it.
Peter, let him talk.
I fucking finished.
I'm still talking to him. That's not it.
I understand, but I'm going back to when he was in here, and he had said to you about, well, hey, don't interrupt me. You go on and on. But the thing is when Peter is making a point, he's making a singular point, and having going in a direction to an end point of a point he wants to make. What Otangelo does is he goes on and throws spaghetti against the wall and makes all these claims. He'll in 90 seconds, Otangelo can make like a dozen unfounded claims, and that's why people need to want to interrupt him all the time, is because he says something crazy, and before he says 5 more crazy things, we want to ask him about the first crazy thing that came out of his mouth.
Yeah, but that's not what just happened.
I think it is.
I think
no, it isn't. It isn't because, as I said, I've been talking to Otangelo from the moment he left.
Mm-hmm. I've been talking to him for a year.
The thing is, what Otangelo wants, if we have this conversation, we need to come up with a better explanation than the one he has, and I'm trying to get through to him that he hasn't offered an explanation, and even if he offers an explanation and we reject it, we do not need to have a better explanation. If you tell me that I'm wearing green underwear and I'm telling you that I don't believe you, I don't have to come up with a picture of you wearing blue underwear. It is up to you to prove to me that you're actually wearing green underwear. That's how simple this is. And that's the part that Otangelo apparently doesn't get. And he says he wasn't interested in just hearing denials. Well, I'm sorry, but that is what you get if you make a claim and you can't back up your claim. Then people are going to reject your claim, and they don't have to come up with something better. You have to come up with something better in order to sustain your claim and to make sure that what you're saying is accurate.
Sure, and preferably a valid argument would help as well, but that's a separate issue.
Yeah, we're back to,
Yeah,
we're back to I don't know. Like, he makes a claim, and you say, I don't believe that claim, and then he says, well, then what's your explanation? And your answer.
Yeah, but what I wanted to point out.
Oh my God! Why do you keep interrupting me in the middle of a fucking sentence? Okay.
He does that to everybody.
I was almost done. I was like literally a half a second away from being done.
It's me, John. You know that by now.
I understand that. All I'm saying is, it goes back to I don't know. You know, he says this is the explanation. We say we don't believe that. Then he says, well, what's your explanation? And our answer, depending on the topic, might be I don't know. And for some reason, he sees no value in that. He sees that as dishonest to say I don't know, and he's more honest in saying, well, God did it, and that's just crazy.
Yeah. Okay. But the fact is that he says that, but that's not what he thinks. Because if you ask him about God's mechanism, he will happily say, I don't know how God did it.
Yeah.
So then I don't know becomes a valid answer. And that's another thing that I would really like to point out when he's in here, because I can do that in writing with him on Discord, as I've been doing for the past few minutes. But I've told him no one is going to benefit from that conversation because no one can see it.
So wait a minute. So you're saying our I don't know isn't valid, but his I don't know is valid?
No,
yes,
in his mind.
The thing is that I don't think that Otangelo realizes that he uses that argument at the end as well, because it is the only honest thing to say. If I ask him what was God's mechanism, he doesn't know that. He can't tell me what the mechanism is.
His answer is God's power, and he considers that an answer.
Or he just doesn't care that he's doing it.
Yeah.
No, because
to be fair,
I've pinned him down on that
several
plus
times. God, right? That's the answer.
Yeah, E equals MC squared. It means energy. Energy is my coffee squared, and that's why I always drink coffee. So, see?
Well, I think what Peter demonstrated too is that even if God's a necessary explanation, it's not a sufficient explanation to achieve the type of thing Otangelo wants it to achieve.
Exactly, because there's no. Because he hasn't offered an explanation.
Comment on the E equals MC squared thing. Actually, for anybody who knows algebra, God's formula is actually E minus MC squared equals God.
Yeah, interest. Yes, I hear what you're saying there, John. Yeah. I get you.
Got it. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Kind of nuanced, but good one.
Yeah. I like this subtlety. I mean,
the other thing,
Peter,
never mind. Can I make a suggestion with you, Peter? The way you were discussing it. Now you tried to pin Otangelo down and say, "Can you repeat my question?" The better way of doing that would have been, "Did you understand the question? Do you need me to rephrase it?" And that would have settled things down a little bit, right?
Well, and the funny thing is he did rephrase it the second time because he originally posed a close-ended question that required a yes or no answer.
Right, and that was.
And then the second time he asked him an open-ended question.
Right. Well, that was going to be my second point. Is don't expect people. Otangelo is not going to do a yes or no question, and not too many people like those type of questions. People want to, at least elaborate on something, or they're not going to just say yes or no. So you got to try to avoid those too. So that's another point.
The thing is too, like some questions are too loaded to just give a yes or no answer too.
Right.
I think,
right.
In fairness to Otangelo, like the question you were asking was relatively complex, and a yes or no answer wouldn't be
Right.
Wouldn't really gain anything from it.
Immutable.
Somebody asked a question.
I want to
right,
hear
but
exactly
can I just tell
what you're saying. No, John, hold on.
I mean, I
John,
jumped in to say
please.
something real small and like.
No,
always
let
jump
me
on top
address
of me.
what Immutable just said about my question.
And this was just a
Immutable.
joke on that. And I was going to say, all I
I
was
can't
going
hear anybody because you guys are fighting over a
say, all I was going to do was make.
You're doing the same thing, John.
Yeah, please. Immutable. So what you said about my question, can you repeat my question back to me and tell me how it's loaded?
I don't remember its precise phrasing. If you could give me the question again, I can explain to you.
It was something.
If you give me the
can
precise
you tell
question, I
me
can explain
the mechanism of how I came up with this avatar. Is that something like that? Was it?
Yeah,
something like that.
I asked him what the mechanism was to create it and what source materials I used, and if he could determine that from just my intelligence and me presenting the picture to him. How is that loaded?
Yeah, well, you're kind of saying that there's a lot of background things that go into these decisions, and so intelligence isn't enough of an explanation.
Exactly, and the reason I said it like that is because Otangelo will say, look at creation, look at the intelligence of God, that explains it. And that's how I tried to come up with an analogy on how you cannot get to a mechanism from that. And we need a mechanism to explain it.
I got it.
So would you say that intelligence... I'm trying to kind of like steelman Otangelo's own argument here, but would you say, like, is the contention here that intelligence isn't really, like, it doesn't cut it in terms of, like, providing a adequate answer to the question you're asking?
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying.
You can't steal a man an invalid argument.
Well, I mean, technically you can.
I mean, the thing is, like, there are some
by changing it, yeah.
The thing is, though, there are some things like which are the essentially the result of an intelligence,
but not just intelligence. It wasn't intelligence and literally nothing else that developed it. It's an intelligence being applied on physical materials, physical substrates, tools, all that stuff, mechanisms for the development of the thing. It's never purely intelligence and nothing else. That was the point that Peter was getting at, because it's essentially what Otangelo was saying. Oh, well, God's intelligence, God's power. That explains nothing. He used his intelligence to do what? He used his power to do what? But I wanted to make another point before I don't get another chance to speak for like 10 minutes, because y'all are engaged in like 3 discussions. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But notice how they say that we are not allowed. They'll essentially say, well, you got to tell me how it did it. What's the mechanism for how the natural world created this or did that? Oh, you don't know? Well, then it was God. Okay, well then how did God do it? Oh, well, see, I don't know exactly the mechanisms that God did. They're attacking us for the same problem they're not really a model has. You have a model, well, and theirs isn't a model. We have models that might not have full explanations for things. Oh, but then that means those models don't work. We have an assertion that something did this, but we couldn't tell you how it did it, but it still works. It's just hypocrisy.
Yeah, I get that point, of course. But I would say that there have been times in human history when we haven't understood the mechanism, and yet we have used things that work because through induction, right? This just works, right? So we're going to use it. We don't know how it works. Steam engine is probably a good example, right?
Wait, we knew how steam engines worked.
We now know how steam engines work.
We knew how steam engines worked when we first developed them. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to develop them.
Well, I'm just saying there was a sense that the mechanism wasn't fully understood.
I mean, we did fully understand thermodynamics, but we knew what a steam engine did and how it did it. I mean, we understood the mechanisms of it.
So can I get in for 3 seconds?
Yeah,
again?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So all I was trying to say like 5 minutes ago was I was going to say like half a sentence because Immutable had said something about loaded question, and all I was going to say was, yeah, like if somebody asks you, did you stop beating your wife? You know, yes or no isn't going to suffice in that.
Just to let you guys in on what is happening. I'm still talking to Artangelo, and he says
I'm
we
sorry
know.
to hear that, Peter.
Hold on. He says we know what intelligence can do, and that chance can do it. Intelligence can make blueprints, machines, factory, energy plans, and so forth.
Sure.
And so I replied, we know what intelligence can do. We also know that intelligent people can't do everything, correct? You can design things, yet you can't stream a Discord hangout. So intelligence isn't enough, correct?
Yeah, I see.
So
Yeah.
I'm still hoping he'll get back.
I don't
Simon,
think so.
I don't think
He tends
so.
not to answer questions when they get too specific. But anyway, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, Simos, I did want to kind of tag on to what you were saying earlier, and I think that I do think there are some cases where like a mechanistic explanation isn't substantive in some situations, or isn't a proper explanation, I suppose. Like if you ask the question,
that can be the case, but I mean,
well, for instance, if I ask the question like, why is the water boiling, right?
Yeah.
Like I could give 2 different types of explanations for that. I could
maybe more, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, at least 2 I could give are, a mechanistic process.
Cup of tea or molecules.
Yeah, precisely.
Vibrating.
But right, but I could also give I could also give an explanation in terms of, agents and their intentions.
Yeah, cup of tea.
Oh yeah, my niece put, boiling water on the stove because she wants to make macaroni and cheese or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if I necessarily accept, like with people like that who kind of want to push naturalism or like materialism is saying like that naturalistic explanations are the only like sufficient explanations like that
philosophical
that inform us about the world.
I get you.
Oh, wait, are intentional explanations non-natural?
Unknown.
I would say no. I've never seen anything that was intentional that wasn't contained within and bound by the natural realm and the ways that it operates. But I mean, I do understand the distinction between the 2 types of explanations, mechanistic versus intentional.
I mean, does an intention have a weight? Does an intention have an electric charge? Does it have...
Yes.
I would say...
No, but it's still
physical. No.
Right, well, I would say yes.
I
would
say
say
categorical.
if it's emergent from the brain, just like water, wetness is emergent from H2O. Right?
I
we
would say
can measure the
that's
weight of H2O.
Yeah,
Can we measure wetness? Well, yeah, we can then, because it's a specific number of atoms which go to make up the wetness that you're feeling. Right?
Yeah, I would say...
about. It's the same process.
Yeah, I'm just not like a hard reductionist like that.
I am.
Right, I would say that's a categorical error, because I would say that, like, when you're referring to something like a thought or something like an intention, that's an abstract notion.
Yeah, but
whereas something like H2O is not abstract. It's a very well defined like
wetness
physical
is
thing.
abstract though, is it?
Yes.
In your analogy, yeah. And I say wetness has a weight.
So is wetness non-natural?
The weight of wetness is the number of atoms that go to make up the fluid that you're calling wet.
Well, how many atoms would that be?
It depends what you're calling wet. If you call a sea wet, then it's obviously an extremely large number, depending on the sea and depending on the bounds that you draw around the sea. So there's no fixed answer to that question.
Well, I mean, but I could take just like a
it's
small
always
cup
changing, right?
and pull water out of the ocean and say this is the ocean, and it's wet, but that's not all the atoms. Like, I'm sorry, wetness is an abstraction. It doesn't have like physical properties like weight and electric charge and temperature and things like that. It consists in other physical substrates that have those properties, but emerging out of that, it does not itself possess those properties.
Right.
Yeah, like for instance, like the wetness of the ocean and the wetness of the rag are obviously going to be different.
Yeah.
Like to one another. Like even if.
And are they the same wetness?
They are.
You're
but
saying
that
they are the
seems
same
to,
wetness, yeah?
Right, but that seems to imply a contradiction because.
I don't think it
like
does.
when I refer to something as being wet, right? Like ideally, like the concept being represented should have the same qualities like all else
Well, of
being
course.
equal. So when I say like the ocean is wet, or like this rag is wet, right? Like there shouldn't be any indication like that the way I'm using the term wetness as an abstract concept is different.
Okay, well,
So-
I think you said it in those two sentences, right? In order to say that they're identical, you had to use two different, two different describers for the wetness.
Wait,
Oh, yeah.
wetness is the describer.
Yeah, no,
Well,
no, I'd say
wetness-
actually the rag and the ocean were the describers for the wetness.
Well,
And I'm saying
no,
both of those,
but
both
the
of
ocean,
those describers will end up having a weight of the wetness.
the ocean
that's
and the
the
rag are the
Sure.
subjects. Wetness would be the predicate.
Sure.
What's
I'm
being
saying
described
that
here
when
is
you-
the wetness of something. And we're comparing it between two objects, like the ocean, for
Right.
instance, and a rag.
Wait, I'm confused. What do we mean when we say describing the wetness of
Yeah.
something? The wetness is the description itself.
Right.
I think we're
So
trying
we're
to,
not describing the description
we're
of something. At least I
changing
don't think
the
so.
language. I think we're changing the language there.
I don't think so.
I guess the
Wait,
point
is wetness not a description?
It can be a description, yeah.
When is it not a description?
Or when you're saying I suppose if you're trying to say the amount of wetness contained within a rag.
I don't know what that means. To me, it's something is either wet or it isn't. It doesn't come in degrees.
Okay, well there we go.
Well, that seems to violate intuition, though. I mean,
I don't
there are
think so.
things which are more wet than others. Like, if I put a drop of water on a rag, it's going to be wet. But
I don't think. I think part of the rag will be wet.
If I dip your finger into a cup, your finger will be wet. If I push you in the pool, would you be more wet?
No, actually, I don't think something completely.
What are we even
submerged is
talking
wet.
about at this point?
I also don't think that it's true that water is wet.
What?
We're talking about
Oh my god!
moistness.
Now you freaked me out.
Moistness.
Speedy, can we just shoot us in the head?
We should shoot it in the head.
Yeah, he wants to talk.
Yeah,
about
water is not wet for the same reason that fire isn't burnt.
Yeah, the only reason Midnight wants to stop the stream is because he wants to talk to.
Yeah, we got eight males in here right now talking about moistness.
Yeah, I
Wetness,
think it's an
actually.
interesting
I'm
discussion.
surprised.
But I appreciate what I appreciate what Leo's saying there. That there is, in some sense, a definite equality or identity between wetnesses. So please don't get me wrong. Hang on
really
a second.
quickly.
Let me finish. Don't get me wrong. That I think I understand what you're saying. So it's not that I'm discounting it, Leo.
Yeah, but the whole with the wetness, saying that something's more wet would be like if I took a piece of paper and I drew a red dot on it, and then I colored the whole paper in red. I wouldn't say that the paper is more red. I would just say that in the first instance, the paper isn't red. Part of the paper is red, and then in the other one, the whole paper could be.
Okay,
said
but
to be
here's
red.
the thing. Okay, based on all the girlfriends I've had over time, there is definitely degrees of wetness. So,
I don't know what that means.
Leo,
that's fair.
Leo,
Good night,
hold on.
John.
Hold on.
I
Do you
wouldn't
seriously
disagree
not
with
know
you,
what that
John.
means?
Good night, John.
Do you ser-
Thank you, John. I
Yeah.
appreciate,
I
I
do
appreciate
think-
the analogy anyway, if no one else does.
I
I
think there's
do,
a way. I do think there actually is a way you could, in a way, kind of like quantitatively assess whether something is more wet than something else, and we invent a term for that. What we call it saturation, like whether or
Yes,
not
that's a
something
good
is.
point as well. Yeah.
I don't think that has to do with wetness. I think saturation has to do with how much of a material can be contained within another before that material cannot absorb any more of the material that it's been absorbing. But I don't think that necessarily applies to specifically wetness.
Well, you could apply that to like the amount of water in a rag. I mean, there is such a thing as a rag that will no longer hold any more water.
Yeah, but I don't think it's any more wet than a rag that's just damp. They're both wet.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Leo. Let's not push the point and try to carry the conversation on past where it's required, because I think
Just like a
other
piece of
people in
paper
this-
that's
I do
other
think
people besides Midnight are getting a little bit bored with it.
a piece of paper that's brick red and a piece of paper that's blood red. One isn't more red than the other.
Oh, you
I
could
mean,
say in some sense it is, though.
I would
I
say
don't
that
that's
think
kind
so.
of That's kind of what I'm saying
Well,
about.
because
when,
then what does it mean to say that something is more red? How do we define when something is more red?
well, because we have two pieces of paper to compare to each other.
Yeah, but how do you define which one is more red?
Well,
What does
if they're
more
the same
red
size,
mean?
If they're the same size bit of paper, right? Then one of them, if it's only half covered in red, the other one will have twice as much red on it if it's fully covered.
Well, yeah, but if the paper that's not fully colored isn't red, part of it is red. So you couldn't compare those two things then.
Well, you'd be able to compare them. You would be able to
but
make
one
some
isn't more
kind
red
of
than the
measurement
other.
about the actual size.
One
of the
has
paper
more
involved.
red on it
okay,
than the
but
other.
Leo,
That doesn't
right.
make it more red.
And
I don't know what that means.
And that's what I'm saying about the language part.
Okay,
of it.
but Leo, here's another example. Okay,
exactly
you and
what I'm saying
me,
about
or
the language.
you and I are driving across the country, and we're playing punch bug. And the more times I hit you, the more times I hit you in the arm, the more red your arm is going to get.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah,
when you say more red.
You know, what about shades? You have different shades of red. I mean,
Shades aren't quantities of a color. They're just variations in the wavelengths that give rise to varying colors. There isn't a quantity.
Well, the point being is that it's another usage of the word more red.
Well, I mean, if that's the case,
Right, that's what I meant,
violet is more red than yellow, but it wouldn't be correct to say that. Because violet isn't red and neither is yellow. So
Well, it is in some
makes
sense,
no
though.
sense.
You just said it
No,
was.
it's not.
Well,
No,
the
it's not.
first part of your argument was, in which case it would be that it is this way, but it's
No.
not. And I'm
But-
saying,
but
okay, well, if it's not,
I didn't
it's
make
not,
that
right?
argument.
Okay,
Simon's
maybe I didn't
violet
hear you
can
correctly.
be, but violet can be yellow. It depends on whether or not she's a coward.
Hey, Peter.
Okay.
Do I hear cows? Do I hear cows?
This is probably your fault, Peter, but I can mute all of you right now. Anyway,
that is my fault. Well, strictly
Anyway,
speaking, it's Critical Cripple's fault.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's like I've said this. I used this argument against dualism before, and it's Wittgenstein's second argument for the meaning of words, but I can't remember the actual name of it offhand. Leo, sorry.
Oh, Polysemous.
No, it's not.
Oh.
It's just that when we use words, sometimes we use like intentional states, and those intentional states are from a particular perspective.
Are you talking intention versus extension?
Yeah, not really, no. It's just the fact that we have a different layer of description. Okay, and that's the issue that I see between mind and brain. So sometimes when we talk about mind, we're talking about intentional states, right? But that's a completely separate word game, right? It's a language. It's a completely different language of words that we use when we describe the brain. Does that mean that the brain and mind are separate? No, I don't think it does. I just think we have developed
I don't think so either.
I think we've developed a separate set of language that we use to describe these things. For the fact we cannot use these simplistic or brain-like language to talk about these things. It wouldn't be convenient. It would be boring. It would be very lengthy. So we develop shortcuts in our language in order to describe what is effectively these things.
So
I just wanted to say
and
I'm
it's
not a
it's
dualist.
the same thing with wetness and these abstract properties. These are invented
Yeah,
paragraphs
I
or
mean,
categories.
when somebody says more red, that could be a device to be saying it is a darker shade of red. It's more red in that it's a darker shade.
Yeah, it could be.
We're not going to solve linguistics tonight, so I'm going to do a morning bramble on something stupid Immutable said here. That naturalism is ungrounded and untenable.
No, it's not.
That'll be
Well, that's because it is.
No, it's not.
We were getting to that as well, weren't we?
I booted
We
him.
were actually getting there before he got sidetracked back to Orthangelo.
I booted again.
That claim makes. I mean, Did Angelo get to you, Immutable, or what?
Oh, he's
No,
Danny
I
got
mean,
to him. Danny
you
got to him.
understand what naturalism is. You understand what it does and doesn't do.
Immutable has a crush
Exactly.
on Danny,
I
and
think
he's
you're-
been warping his mind.
So it's me that doesn't understand. Okay.
Well, no, I think Immutable is begging the question against philosophical naturalism.
Hey, guys.
I would also
Just
say that
shoot in
when you understand naturalism, you also understand what it's supposed to do and what it's not supposed to do.
We're going to shoot it in the head now.
I mean, naturalism itself is a philosophy. It's not an explanatory framework.
Of course.
Well, unless it's methodological naturalism, of course, in which case
Well,
it
yes.
purports to have methods by which we can explain natural things.
Well,
Yeah,
sure,
but
but most people
methodological naturalism isn't naturalism. It shouldn't really be called methodological naturalism for that reason.
When people say naturalism, they refer to philosophical naturalism.
No one wants your opinion, Immutable.
Well, it's
I
not
don't
my
think I did.
opinion. It's the consensus within philosophical
Oh,
circles
it's
that
not-
have-
oh,
that
feel good,
are
feel good.
responsible for
Here we
documenting the
go, here we
progress
go.
and the subsequent downfall of
Here we
logical
go.
positivism and scientism.
Wait a minute. So your claim is that when scientists use the word naturalism, they're referring to.
They're referring to an ideology or philosophy. They're not referring to.
No,
They're not referring to methodological naturalism.
Immutable.
Generally, no.
Generally, no.
Has drunk the
Hey.
Kool-Aid of Steve McRae. So
I have an
we can
answer
ignore
to
everything he
Wait,
says.
hold on, Simos. Where the hell did that come from? The fuck?
Steve
not
McRae
right.
and Immutable, they do sound like twins, don't they?
I don't know if you know Steve McRae's argument
Anyway,
for atheism, but
Immutable.
Oh, I do. and I
apparently
hate
he
it.
has a Venn diagram, so it must be true.
Immutable. I refute you thus.
Yeah. Hey, Simon. Next.
Hang on a minute, guys. My girlfriend's calling. Yes, darling? Oh, not tonight. Answers. Atheism.
God damn it! I got cut off at the end there.
While I do like speed.
Yeah, because I was about to say, yeah, the next thing you know, Immutable Destiny is going to be platforming rapists on his channel.
Oh,
for fuck's
I'm glad you
sake.
didn't say that.
I think that's a little
I'm
bit
glad
over.
Wow.
I cut you
Really,
off.
John? Okay, that.
Hey,
Oh,
wait,
you're
wait,
kidding me. I need to fucking.
He ended it. I was almost going to unmute and say it while the thing was doing it.
Yeah, but you
Thanks,
can't unmute.
John. I
when
appreciate that.
You can't unmute while it's playing that brand.
Well, Simus did. He said something during it.
Yeah, I can hear it, but I don't think it shows up on the stream at all.
I think it does.
Really?
I
Well,
don't
no,
know. It was
he's
quite
using
funny.
OBS.
It
I'll
was
give it
quite
a listen
funny.
right now and find out.
It was quite funny.
What's up?
Oh, let's see.
Are we
Anyway.
going to have? Are we going to have the same conversation about science?
What the fuck is this?
I'm not having a conversation with you about it. You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Apparently, the version that speed is defined
Speed is a
of
list to
naturalism and scientism are correct, and everybody else who has studied and coined the term originally are just fucking wrong. There we go.
I love you
Well,
guys.
Sonny boy, I have studied all of that shit too, and I found
Yeah,
out
Clearly, you
can't
need
hear.
and
Full of
clearly
shit.
you should get a refund.
full
Look,
of shit.
ladies, you're all beautiful. Relax.
Goodbye, guys.
Good.
Midnight. We'll have a phone call.
Whoever said
Yeah.
bye.
Okay, I'll call you in a minute.
Yep.
My kids.
What? So like, wait a minute. So Midnight can't go to sleep
Night, Spade.
until Daddy calls him and says goodnight.
Apparently.
I wanted to tell Speed that it does show up on the stream.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, of course it does. Of
No, it's too late.
course it does.
I'm just curious. Has any of you seen the debate between Jail Warren and Otangelo on the plot hole?
Oh yeah, did I?
Yes.
Oh, worth
I-
watching.
I
I'm
went,
unfamiliar with this thing.
Hmm.
I'm
It's
unfamiliar
worth
with this
watching
occurrence.
if you want to see Tangelo get fucking smacked around for an hour.
I mean,
The best debate Otangelo ever did was when he was on Modern Day Debate with the guy who claimed that they found Noah's Ark. He didn't say a word during the entire debate. Not a single
Oh
word.
yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Really?
Still think that was one of his best.
Yeah.
That's almost like a moment of solace.
Well, not only that,
Yeah.
I happen to have seen the program that guy was referring to about who it was, and he said he didn't say the guy who discovered it. He said the guy who was his student, right?
Mhm.
So the whole thing, he was going, now this guy, he's written papers and he discovered XYZ on it. And I was like, no, he didn't. I'm sure it was somebody else. And I went and looked it up, and indeed it was. It was dated another 10 years before the guy even.
Yeah,
he was
the
talking
funniest
about.
thing is when R.J. Downard asked Otangelo what convinced him that the guy who he was his debate partner was correct, and Otangelo couldn't answer that.
The thing is, I don't know if Otangelo really is concerned about his the people he partners with, in terms of their how they're gleaning information as much as he's concerned that they agree with his preferred interpretation.
I can answer you that because he just said that to me repeatedly. He's not interested in other people's opinions about his God claim, and I told him
That's not true.
That then there's no need for him to go on channels or to talk about his God claim. Then he should just go about his business and leave the internet.
Yeah, no, that's not true. That's demonstrably not true because he sucks up to DD's ass, right? So he can.
No.
He wants to know what DD has to say about the subject.
He had a falling out with Darth, and
No,
he doesn't want to talk about it.
They're back together again.
Wait, since when?
I don't know. A couple of days ago, I saw him in a Discord with him. We're in Discord together.
It's kind of interesting because a year ago, there was Otangelo vehemently hated Darth.
Yeah, that was before Otangelo thought, shit, I'm going to lose every fucking discussion unless I try and learn something else.
Okay, so my hypothesis is that Otangelo is teetering on the brink of losing his faith, and he needs something to back it up. But that's what I think.
Yeah,
don't know about that.
The fact he runs away when you get to the difficult question, or I've asked him one question 3 times, right? It's a relatively simple question, relatively simple, and considering it's the central thesis in his argument, you would think he would know about it. But the first time, he answered completely incorrectly, which I pointed out. Didn't have any time to follow up. The second time, the first time I answered it, he ran away. It was on Jeff's, and he just completely ran away. The second time I asked it, he answered completely wrong and didn't get to follow up, despite the fact that the guy he was debating, a physicist, went, yeah, that's what I meant to say. Right? Then, okay, fine. And then he answered it wrong, and that was the end. And then the third time I asked it, he was on a debate, and I asked it in one of the questions. I think it was on Tang or Pothole or something. And he said, in fact, it was in the J.L. Warren. I asked the question, and he said, I don't know what that means. So invoking Danny there.
Or Leo.
Well, yeah, Leo's got it from Danny, but yeah. So that says to me quite a lot.
We've nailed him down a couple of times on coming up with an explanation, and that's when he runs. And to me, that is a clear sign of not being convinced of your own claims. Because if you're convinced, you can happily come up with an argument as to why you are convinced, and he can't do that.
I'm not sure that's necessarily the case because
I want to hear more about Leo getting it from Danny.
Well, that's what he got from Danny. When Danny was always used to say.
Oh, I thought you meant he got it from Danny.
No, fucking hell.
No,
Danny
that kind
should
of
be
it.
so lucky. He's
John, you just want to sin. That's all.
I just want to sin. Yep.
Yep, that's it.
But anyway,
go
ahead.
I do think, Peter, that's a kind of a universal phenomenon with creationists, though. They want to claim, that God did it, but they won't explain how. Part of that's because they can't, even Even the academic creationists, quote unquote, can't do that.
No, I agree. I agree with that. But so what I base it on is Otangelo's whole demeanor when it comes to critical questions. You can see he's getting uncomfortable, and then he runs away.
Yeah.
And
Well, he doesn't
even,
understand the question usually.
Well, he says he doesn't understand it.
And I've asked him flat out. So what convinced you? And so the only thing is that he can come up with, and that's a part that I'm not going to disclose because he told me that in confidence.
Yeah, I know why.
But
Well, he doesn't have to say why because he'll use Saigar's like last argument, right?
no. It's because he went
he
through a rough time and then found solace in Jesus. But that is not in any way evidence that this Jesus actually exists. You can find solace in the book of Harry Potter if you go through a rough patch and find good things in that.
Peter,
it doesn't mean that Harry Potter is real.
Sure.
If you're talking about his depression, he's revealed that. I don't know if that's what you meant or not, but he said that himself. So,
okay.
I mean, what it turns out to be, like I met a lot of people in prison that, like, what it is they have like this epiphanous moment, like, and then they want to give credit to this God when really they fixed themselves. You know what I mean? Like the AA thing where, supposedly it's God that's, keeping you from the whiskey or whatever. But really what it is alcoholics who got away from being alcoholics, they are not giving themselves enough credit.
Exactly. And that's why I think that whole part is harmful. Because if you're not giving yourself the credit, that means that you can have a relapse at any time. The moment you have a problem, you get a problem with your beliefs.
Yeah.
Because now suddenly your help is gone and you fall back. Once you know that you did it yourself, that you conquered it yourself, you can conquer it at any time.
Yeah, but there's an endless cycle of apologetics which you can use. And although we can debunk most of them, obviously the one we can't debunk is the one that they usually end up on, which is faith, right?
Hey.
I don't even know if faith is necessarily a bad thing.
Oh, did you tuck your son in, Speed?
Yeah, I talked to him. He's pretty depressed about that conversation he had. I just hung up with him, but anyway, I caught the tail end of what you said, Peter.
Oh, okay. We're off of the scientism thing for now.
I'm curious about what Immutable just said. Why isn't faith a bad thing?
Peter, you
Why
said
isn't
something about
faith
alcohol.
a bad thing? I mean, I don't think necessarily everybody has to have a good grounding for what they believe.
Well,
I think if you're going to do that, you're going to find yourself in some pretty awkward situations.
Yeah.
I'm an epistivist, so I reject faith as the most dishonest position to take. Because can you name a single position you couldn't take based on faith?
That's probably why
reliability
you couldn't
memory.
take on faith.
Reliability of memory.
Reliability of experience. I mean, anything that involves axiomatic statements.
You're equivocating. You're equivocating the two separate fucking definitions of faith. Peter's talking about religious faith, and you're talking about faith as in trust of having,
Yeah, I only use the word faith in the religious definition because otherwise you can just use trust instead, and that will make the conversation a lot clearer.
So I mean,
when you.
So if I can steel man you, the type of faith you're referring to, and I don't think I'm straw manning it, it's a type of faith that doesn't rely upon evidence for its grounding.
Exactly. It's because of religious
the way the Bible defines it, I think it's Hebrews 1:11.
Yeah, substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not
Exactly.
seen, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say in a similar kind of sense, axiomatic beliefs are similar to that. Right? There is no way logically that you can justify those beliefs that's non-fallacious.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, a priori that's. Yeah, there's not a way you can justify it a priori that's not also fallacious. So I would say you take those beliefs to an extent on faith, if you want to call it that.
Well, I wouldn't say faith, because basically, when you're talking about an axiomatic belief, you're right. You don't have to justify it, but it's based on other data that you've gathered in your mind. Like, you've come to a position, I have to accept this because of everything else I've experienced. Like where you take on axiomatically that your senses are reliable. Or I mean, I can't think of another example.
Other minds exist, reliability
The
of memory.
fact that your senses are reliable are things you can test. The laws of logic, the fact that they can come up with constant.
That's not the kind of thing we're talking about, though, is it?
Yeah, the thing I'm referring to by...
In order to do that, you have to assume they're true.
Yeah, that's the
what
thing.
We're talking. That assumption that they are true is what we're talking about.
Right. Yes. Any statement that does not refer... Well, so any statement like the sky is blue, it references back to, in some form or another, the laws of logic, which are typically what are meant by axiomatic statements. It always will circle back to them.
And definitely there's a justification for them in terms of a posteriori.
Well, sure. There's a reason we adopt them. Yeah, sure.
So
I mean,
no one's saying that. But what we are saying, I believe, and I am saying it too, is that you have to assume the truth of them in order to demonstrate them to be true. And that
precisely.
That in itself is some sort of circular reasoning. Now, does it mean you're wrong to do that? No, it doesn't. What it means is that I believe is that you can't give a deductive argument which isn't going to be circular.
Right. You can't give...
I still struggle with the fact of whether or not assuming something is true, if that is based on faith.
Well,
sure.
What makes it based on faith is that I can assume all sorts of things are true without, like, a priori, right? Without evidence for them. But the thing is, you can't justify axioms in the way you can justify other things.
You know what, though?
Right? There's no way to know.
I said it really succinctly.
But if an axiom keeps providing good results,
absolutely.
Then
after the fact, that's correct.
Peter just stabbed this argument right in the fucking heart. Okay, because again, there's still some equivocation going on here. To equate axiomatic beliefs with having to take them on faith is completely missing the point. Okay, because again, when he says faith, he's talking about faith of a religious apprehension. And the fact of the matter is, like, and then there's even apologists out there, like one I can think of off the top of my head, the idiot, that Sky Out dude. He claims that his belief in God is a properly basic belief. End of discussion. Like, I take it axiomatically. Like, I don't have to show you why God exists or why I think God exists, because I take it as a properly basic belief. Now, that's faith. Okay, that you could say that that's taken on faith, but when you're talking about the axiomatic beliefs, that you're basing your logic on, it's not religious faith. It's based on other logical, facts and assumptions.
So to address Peter's point, right, the fact that they've been consistent with arguments that we conventionally use, I would caution. I think that's a semi-valid point, although I would caution that because that falls victim to the black swan fallacy, right? I mean, just because the majority of situations we use these axioms in doesn't result in the axiom being violated. It doesn't mean that there do exist cases where the axiom is in fact violated. Right?
Exactly, but that is the point where we then need to come up with a better axiom. As long as it keeps providing correct results, good results, then we can trust it, and that has nothing to do with faith.
Yeah, that's trust.
That is trust.
I agree.
And that is what I see. If you're talking about logic, we can trust logic because it keeps giving us.
What about the circular nature of the argument? That's what I'm trying to address. And you keep going back
Yeah.
to this point about,
Yeah,
well, yeah, after the fact, we can assume we can find reliable results from it, and that justifies it. And I'm saying, yeah, that's obviously the case.
So
but
maybe,
hang on, let me finish. Let me finish. But you know, what about the person who says, well, I pray, and that brings me, you know, peace of mind, so therefore God exists.
I'm not arguing with the fact that prayer can give you peace of mind, and we can actually explain why prayer can give you peace of mind.
Sure,
what I'm saying is that
they have an argument for it. As well,
what I'm saying is the things that you pray for, you don't get accurate results. That is the part where you have faith, and you keep being confronted.
So you're begging the question against what somebody is actually praying for.
I mean, I myself, I use the term confidence, right? I mean, to me, I know that's the same thing as trust.
We are in agreement on that, David. Really, we are.
Maybe it's a language.
None of us are saying. Sorry, mate.
Maybe it's a language thing, but let me explain. Let's say that I presuppose that a God exists. That will never get me any results.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
If you think that the belief in
God... It doesn't get me any reliable, testable results.
Yeah, well, testable is a whole different other thing. You may not need it to be testable. I mean, people that have... I can expound on my position a little bit. Like, people that claim to believe in God, for instance. Like, if we're going off of consistency, right? Like, when I was a Christian, and, you know, before I converted, rather... Right, like when I would pray, I would get results, and I would have, you know, consistent behavior from how I chose to worship, and, you know, give thanks and offerings to, you know, to the God that I believed in. And it was a consistent process, so I could say that there's, you know, a form of consistency.
You always got a result when you pray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now maybe it's not the result I desire to occur, but I always got a result.
See. And that is where I have a problem with you saying I got a result.
Well,
and that it was consistent, because the result was either yes, no, maybe later. Those are the three options.
I understand what you're saying about that. But,
and if you can come up with that, you're
talking about miracles. Right, we're
I'm
just talking.
I'm not talking about miracles.
I mean, I think.
We're just talking about peace of mind. Right?
No, I'm not talking about miracles.
We're just talking about mental relief.
But no, what he's saying is, okay, Immutable was saying, he says I get results. Okay.
No, he said no. Hold on. He said he got consistent.
Can you let John, Peter? Please let John try to represent what I said, even if it won't work.
Yeah, and then you can tell me